Hey everyone, welcome to Potter Paradox. If you want to more what if story like this, like and subscribe. Now let's get started.
What if Harry accidentally apparated into the Dragon Reserve at age 5 and bonded with a Hungarian Horntail? Chapter 1, The Unexpected Bond. 5-year-old Harry Potter sprinted behind the school bins, heart thumping wildly against his ribs. Dudley and his friends were gaining on him. Their shouts echoed across the playground. "We're gonna get you, freak." Harry darted around the corner, feet slipping on wet concrete. A dead end. Panic surged through him as he pressed his small body against the wall. Dudley's gang rounded the corner, 5 against 1, their faces twisted with the cruel delight that only children hunting other children can muster. Nowhere to run now. Dudley sneered, cracking his knuckles. Harry closed his eyes tight. His thoughts raced desperately. I need to be somewhere else. Anywhere else. Somewhere safe. Please. A strange sensation gripped him, like being squeezed through a tight rubber tube. His stomach lurched, the world compressed, and then... pop! The concrete vanished beneath his feet. Harry tumbled forward onto rocky soil and scraggly grass. The schoolyard noise disappeared, replaced by a distant roaring sound. The air felt different, warmer, thinner, with an unfamiliar smoky scent. Harry blinked, adjusting to the sudden sunlight. He wasn't behind the school anymore. He wasn't anywhere he recognized. What the massive mountains towered around him, their peaks lost in clouds. Harry had never seen mountains before, except in books Dudley had torn up. Below him stretched a sprawling valley dotted with strange structures, dome-shaped buildings, fenced enclosures, and what looked like massive bonfires burning in controlled pits. But it wasn't the landscape that made Harry's jaw drop. It was the creatures soaring overhead. Dragons. Real, actual dragons. A red one with gleaming scales swooped past, its wingspan casting a momentary shadow over him. Further away, a green dragon released a jet of flame into the air. "I'm dreaming," Harry whispered, pinching himself hard. The pain felt real enough. A shout echoed from somewhere below. Harry ducked behind a boulder, watching as a man in leather gear ran up a path, pointing at something. "Jenkins. We've got a breached containment in Sector 7. Juvenile Horntails loose." Harry peered around the boulder, curiosity overwhelming fear. Something was moving through the tall grass about 50 yards away, something much closer than the other dragons. The grass parted, revealing a creature the size of a small pony, but nothing like any pony Harry had ever seen. Black scales glittered in the sunlight. Spikes protruded from its tail, which whipped back and forth as it moved. Its wings, not yet full-grown but impressive nonetheless, flexed experimentally. A Hungarian Horntail, though Harry wouldn't learn this name until later. The young dragon stopped, snout twitching. It turned toward Harry's hiding spot with unnerving precision. Harry held his breath. The dragon stalked closer, moving with surprising grace for something with such dangerous features. Its eyes locked on Harry's, brilliant amber orbs with vertical pupils. Harry should have been terrified. Anyone would be. But something strange happened instead, a warmth spread through his chest, completely different from fear. The dragon cocked its head, as if equally puzzled by the sensation. "Don't move," a man's voice hissed from somewhere to Harry's left. "Stay absolutely still." But Harry couldn't look away from the dragon. It moved closer still, now just 10 feet away, studying him with intelligent eyes. "Hello," Harry thought, not expecting anything. It just seemed like the polite thing to do. The dragon's head jerked back slightly. It made a curious rumbling sound deep in its throat. And somehow, impossibly, Harry felt an answering rumble in his own mind. Not words exactly, but impressions, curiosity, interest, a strange sense of recognition. "Merlin's beard," the man whispered. The dragon took another step forward. Harry, acting on pure instinct, slowly extended his hand, palm forward. The dragon hesitated, then pressed its snout against Harry's tiny fingers. A jolt of energy surged between them. Golden light spiraled around Harry's arm, around the dragon's head, connecting them in luminous threads. Harry gasped, not from pain but from the sudden rush of sensations. He could feel the dragon's heartbeat alongside his own, sense its confusion mingled with fascination. Impossible, the man breathed, stepping into view. He was tall and muscular with flaming red hair pulled back in a ponytail. Burns and scars marked his exposed arms, and he wore dragon-skin gloves and boots. Charlie Weasley, though again, Harry wouldn't know this yet. "Kid," Charlie said softly, "don't make any sudden movements." "How did you get in here?" Harry opened his mouth to answer, but the dragon chose that moment to push forward, nearly knocking him over. Instead of attacking, it nuzzled against him like an overgrown, scaly cat, rumbling contentedly. "I don't know where I am," Harry admitted, automatically stroking the dragon's snout. It felt natural somehow, like they'd known each other forever. "I was running from my cousin, and I just appeared here." Charlie's eyes widened, taking in Harry's appearance, the oversized clothes, taped glasses, skinny frame. His gaze paused on the lightning-shaped scar partially hidden beneath messy black hair. "Holy shit," Charlie whispered, then immediately looked embarrassed at cursing in front of a child. "You're Harry Potter." Harry frowned. "How do you know my name?" Before Charlie could answer, shouts erupted from below. More dragon handlers were running toward them, wands drawn, with serious expressions. "Weasley! Get away from there. We're setting up a containment field." A burly man with a thick mustache led the group. "Wait!" Charlie held up his hands. "Director Dragos, something incredible is happening." The golden threads connecting Harry and the dragon pulsed brighter. The other handlers stopped in their tracks, mouths falling open. "Impossible," Director Dragos muttered. "A bonding? That's just old legends." Harry didn't understand what they were talking about. He only knew that the dragon felt right beside him, like finding something he hadn't realized was missing. "What's your name?" he asked the dragon, not expecting an actual answer. What he got wasn't words but a sensation, fierce heat, protection, a soaring feeling of freedom. "Blaze," Harry said decisively. "I think you're Blaze." The dragon, Blaze, rumbled approvingly. "Someone get Dumbledore," Director Dragos ordered, never taking his eyes off the boy and dragon. "And someone else figure out how a child breached our security wards and ended up in the most dangerous section of the Romanian Dragon Reserve." 2 hours later, Harry sat in Director Dragos's office, a cup of hot chocolate going cold in his hands. Blaze curled possessively around his chair, refusing to be separated even by a few feet. The dragon handlers had tried everything short of stunning the creature, which Charlie had strongly advised against. Harming the dragon now could damage the bond, he'd explained. And who knows what that would do to the boy. So here they were, a 5-year-old, a juvenile Hungarian Horntail, and a room full of bewildered wizards. "Accidental apparition," a witch named Helena said, shaking her head. "Across international boundaries, through some of the strongest wards in Eastern Europe. It shouldn't be possible. Neither should a human-dragon bond," Charlie pointed out. "Yet here we are." Director Dragos paced the length of his office. "The ministry will have our heads for this. A missing child, the boy who lived no less, found in our reserve bonded to one of the most dangerous dragon species known to wizard kind." Harry quietly sipped his hot chocolate, still processing everything he'd learned in the past couple hours. Magic was real. He was a wizard. His parents hadn't died in a car crash but were murdered by an evil wizard. And somehow, he was famous. But none of that seemed as important as Blaze, whose scaled head now rested in Harry's lap. "Can I stay with her?" Harry asked, interrupting the adults' conversation. They fell silent, exchanging uncomfortable glances. Charlie approached carefully, crouching to meet Harry's eyes. "Harry, dragons aren't pets. Hungarian Horntails are especially dangerous. When fully grown, Blaze will be over 40 feet long with enormous fire-breathing capability. She won't hurt me, Harry said with absolute certainty. The connection humming between them confirmed it. That may be, Director Dragos interjected, but you're a child who belongs with your family. Harry's expression darkened. The Dursleys aren't my family. They hate me. An uncomfortable silence followed this proclamation. Charlie looked troubled. What exactly happens at your aunt and uncle's house, Harry? He asked gently. Before Harry could answer, green flames erupted in the fireplace. A tall, thin man with a long silver beard and half-moon spectacles stepped out, brushing ash from magnificent purple robes. His eyes, behind glasses, were startlingly blue and fixed immediately on Harry. "Ah," said Albus Dumbledore. "I see the reports were not exaggerated." Blaze lifted her head, smoke curling from her nostrils as she assessed the newcomer. Harry instinctively placed a calming hand on her neck. "Headmaster Dumbledore," Director Dragos greeted with obvious relief. "Thank you for coming so quickly." Dumbledore nodded politely but didn't take his eyes off Harry and the dragon. "In my considerable lifetime, I have seen many wonders, but this." He gestured toward the golden thread still faintly visible between boy and dragon. "This is truly extraordinary." He approached slowly, respectful of the dragon's protective posture. "Hello, Harry. I am Professor Dumbledore. We have much to discuss, but first, I must ask, are you well?" Harry nodded, suddenly shy in front of this imposing figure. "Good." Dumbledore smiled kindly. "And your new friend?" "This is Blaze," Harry said, patting the dragon's neck. "She's mine now. Or I'm hers. I'm not sure which." "Both, I suspect," Dumbledore said thoughtfully. "A magical bond such as this works in both directions." The adults launched into a complicated discussion about dragon bonds, magical theory, and what to do next. Harry caught words like unprecedented and potentially dangerous and magical development concerns. "We must return him to his relatives immediately," Dumbledore eventually said with finality. "The blood protection is essential." Harry's heart plummeted. "No," he cried, jumping to his feet. Blaze immediately rose with him, tail swishing agitatedly. "I'm not going back there." "Harry," Dumbledore said gently, "I understand this is difficult, but there are protections in place. They make me sleep in a cupboard." Harry blurted out. "They don't feed me properly. Dudley hits me, and they never stop him. I'm not going back." Shock rippled through the room. Charlie's face flushed with anger, and even Director Dragos looked disturbed. "A cupboard?" Charlie repeated incredulously. "Headmaster, is this true?" Dumbledore's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. "I was unaware of the specifics of Harry's living situation." "Well, now you're aware," Charlie said firmly. "And you can't possibly suggest sending him back." "The blood protection is not a simple matter to discard," Dumbledore replied. "It has kept Harry safe from those who would harm him." "Safe from dark wizards maybe, but not from his own relatives," Charlie argued. Harry felt Blaze's emotions surge alongside his own, protectiveness, anger, determination. The temperature in the room rose noticeably. Director Dragos glanced nervously at the young dragon, whose scales were beginning to glow with inner heat. "I think," Helena said carefully, "we should all calm down before we have an incident." Too late. The golden threads connecting Harry and Blaze suddenly flared bright as the sun. Harry felt a rush of power unlike anything he'd experienced, raw, primal magic flooding through their bond. Without conscious thought, flames erupted around both of them, a protective circle that had the adult stumbling backward. "Harry!" Dumbledore called, drawing his wand. "Control your emotions." But Harry couldn't. Years of mistreatment, fear, and loneliness crashed through him. He'd finally found something, someone, who wanted him, and they were going to take that away too. The fire intensified, climbing higher. Remarkably, Harry felt no heat or pain, just the dragon's fierce determination to protect him. Charlie stepped forward cautiously, hands raised. "Harry, it's okay. No one's taking you anywhere right now. We're going to figure this out together." His calm, sincere voice penetrated Harry's panic. Slowly, the flames receded, though Blaze remained coiled protectively around him. "Well," Director Drago said into the stunned silence that followed. "I believe that settles the question of whether they should be separated." Dumbledore stroked his beard, studying Harry with new interest. "Indeed. This bond appears to have already affected his magic in significant ways." He sighed. "Perhaps we need to reconsider our approach." The adults talked late into the night. Harry, exhausted from the day's events and the magical outburst, fell asleep against Blaze's warm scales. The dragon curled around him, one wing extended like a blanket, glaring suspiciously at anyone who approached. Charlie volunteered to stay and watch over them. He conjured a comfortable chair nearby and settled in with a dragon care manual, though he knew this situation went far beyond anything written in books. Around midnight, the office door opened quietly. Dumbledore entered, looking weary. "How is he?" he asked softly. "Sleeping peacefully," Charlie replied. "First time today he's fully relaxed." Dumbledore nodded, taking a seat opposite Charlie. "I've spoken with the ministry. As you can imagine, they're rather alarmed." "And the Dursleys?" "Have been informed of Harry's extended absence." Dumbledore's expression revealed nothing, but Charlie suspected the conversation hadn't gone well. They were less concerned than one might hope. Charlie scowled. "Headmaster, with all due respect, how could you have left him with those people? Didn't anyone check on him?" "Mrs. Fig provided reports," Dumbledore said. "Though I'm now questioning her observational skills." He sighed deeply. "The blood protection is, critically important, Charlie. Lord Voldemort may be gone, but his followers remain. Some would stop at nothing to harm the boy. And yet here he is, having accidentally apparat across Europe to escape his cousin," Charlie pointed out. "That doesn't speak well of his protection or happiness." They both looked at the sleeping child and dragon, the magical thread still faintly visible between them. "What happens now?" Charlie asked. Dumbledore steepled his fingers. "That is the question, isn't it? I've consulted with experts in magical bonds. None have encountered anything like this before, but all agree, separating them could be catastrophically dangerous to both. So he stays here. The ministry is resistant to the idea of a 5-year-old living in a dragon reserve," Dumbledore said dryly. "Though I've managed to convince them temporary accommodation is necessary while we study the situation." Charlie glanced at Harry's small form. "He needs more than accommodation, Headmaster. He needs a home, education, proper care. Are you volunteering, Mr. Weasley?" Charlie blinked, caught off guard. Well, I'm not exactly qualified to raise a child." "And yet you seem quite protective of this one already," Dumbledore observed with the faintest smile. "Anyone would be, after hearing how those muggles treated him," Charlie defended. "Perhaps." Dumbledore stood, approaching the sleeping pair. "The dragon responds well to you. Harry seems to trust you. And I suspect we'll need someone with dragon handling expertise to navigate this unique situation." Charlie's mind raced. "You're suggesting I become his guardian? Here at the reserve?" "Temporarily, at least," Dumbledore said. "Until we determine the full nature of this bond and its implications." Charlie ran a hand through his red hair, considering. His mother would have a fit when she heard. Yet looking at Harry, thin, vulnerable, yet somehow connected to one of the most dangerous magical creatures known, Charlie couldn't imagine walking away. "I'll need help," he said finally. "Resources, support. And we'll need to create proper living quarters, educational arrangements." All manageable, Dumbledore assured him. The Ministry is quite motivated to handle this situation discreetly. As if sensing their discussion, Blaise opened one amber eye, regarding them suspiciously before shifting her wing to cover Harry more completely. She's remarkably protective for a juvenile dragon, Charlie noted. Normally at this age, they're primarily self-interested. The bond appears to be changing both of them, Dumbledore mused. I wonder what other effects we'll observe as time progresses. Charlie thought about his family's reaction to all this. His mother would alternate between horrified and delighted. The twins would be endlessly jealous. Ron, closest to Harry's age, would probably think it was the coolest thing ever. And Ginny, well, Ginny had been raised on stories of Harry Potter. I'll do it, Charlie decided. I'll look after him. Them. Whatever this is. Excellent, Dumbledore said, eyes twinkling. I had hoped you'd say that. The paperwork is already prepared. Charlie shook his head with a rueful smile. You were that confident? Let's say I've learned to prepare for multiple possibilities, Dumbledore replied enigmatically. They both turned as Harry stirred in his sleep. The boy murmured something, brow furrowing. Immediately, Blaise rumbled soothingly, and Harry settled back into peaceful slumber. One question, Headmaster, Charlie said quietly. What happens when it's time for him to attend Hogwarts? Dumbledore's smile faded slightly. That, Mr. Weasley, is a bridge we shall cross when we come to it. For now, let us focus on the remarkable child before us and the equally remarkable bond he has formed. Harry woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a disorienting moment, he expected to see the underside of the Dursley's staircase. Instead, he found himself curled against warm scales, a leathery wing still draped over him like a blanket. Morning, sleepyhead, a cheerful voice called. Harry sat up, rubbing his eyes. Charlie Weasley stood nearby, setting a tray of food on a small table. Hungry? I've got eggs, sausages, and toast. Dragon handlers need a good breakfast, lots of energy for the day ahead. Dragon handlers? Harry repeated sleepily, reaching for his glasses. Charlie grinned. Well, you're handling a dragon better than most of our senior staff, so I'd say that qualifies you. The events of the previous day came rushing back. Harry turned to Blaise, who was already awake and watching him with intelligent eyes. She's still here, he said wonderingly. It wasn't a dream. Not a dream, Charlie confirmed. Though pretty extraordinary all the same. He pulled up a chair. We've got a lot to talk about, Harry. But first, breakfast. Harry slid off Blaise's back, approaching the table cautiously. The amount of food seemed enormous compared to what he was used to at the Dursleys. All this is for me. Something flickered across Charlie's face, anger quickly masked. Yes, all for you. And if you're still hungry afterward, there's more. Harry didn't need further encouragement. He dug in eagerly while Blaise watched with interest. Oh, Charlie said, producing a large bucket of raw meat. Breakfast for your friend too. Blaise rumbled happily, moving with surprising delicacy to accept the offering. Now then, Charlie said once both had made progress on their meals. We've figured out some arrangements. You'll be staying here at the reserve for the time being. Harry paused mid-bite. Not going back to the Dursleys. Not right now, no. Charlie's expression turned serious. Harry, what you told us about how they treated you, that wasn't right. No child should be kept in a cupboard or denied food. Harry looked down at his plate. He'd never heard an adult say this so plainly before. The headmaster and I have arranged for you to stay here, with me looking after you, Charlie continued. It won't be a normal childhood, this is a dragon reserve, after all, but I promise you'll be safe, well-fed, and properly cared for. And Blaise stays with me? Harry asked, the most important question in his mind. Yes. The bond between you makes separation dangerous, Charlie explained. Though we'll need to work on training and safety measures. Hungarian Horntails aren't exactly known for their gentle temperament. Harry glanced at Blaze, who was delicately picking through her meat. She's gentle with me. Yes, and that's remarkable, Charlie agreed. But she's still a dragon, Harry. As she grows, and she'll grow very quickly, she'll become more powerful and potentially more dangerous to others. You'll both need to learn control. Harry nodded solemnly. He could feel Blaze's emotions through their connection, currently contentment mixed with curiosity, but he had sensed her fierceness too. We've prepared quarters for you both, Charlie said. A cottage near mine, modified to accommodate a growing dragon. It won't be permanent, we'll need larger arrangements as Blaze gets bigger, but it should work for now. My own place? Harry asked incredulously. Charlie laughed. Well, mine too, most of the time. You're still 5, Harry. You need supervision. I'm used to doing things myself, Harry said with the quiet confidence of a child who had learned self-reliance too early. I'm sure you are, Charlie replied gently. But everyone needs help sometimes. Even dragon handlers. After breakfast, Charlie led them outside. The dragon reserve looked even more impressive by daylight. Nestled within a valley surrounded by the Carpathian Mountains, the Romanian dragon sanctuary spread across hundreds of acres, divided into habitats suited for different dragon species. Workers bustled about, some riding brooms to monitor dragons from above, others carrying equipment or food. Many stopped to stare as Charlie led Harry and Blaze through the central area. Word travels fast, Charlie explained, nodding to his curious colleagues. The boy who lived bonding with a dragon? It's unprecedented. Harry shrunk slightly under the attention. Sensing his discomfort, Blaze growled softly, and the staring wizards found reasons to look elsewhere. Thanks, Harry murmured to her. Their new home turned out to be a cozy stone cottage with an attached structure that looked like a cross between a barn and a dragon pen. Inside the cottage, Harry found a bedroom with actual furniture, a real bed, dresser, desk, and bookshelves stocked with both magical and Muggle children's books. The clothing's temporary, Charlie said, gesturing to the wardrobe. We transfigured some basics, but we'll get you proper things soon. The room expands magically as needed, and there's a connecting door to Blaze's space. Harry's eyes widened at the doorway leading to a large, cave-like area with a heated stone floor and plenty of open space. This is brilliant, he breathed. It'll do for now, Charlie said modestly. Director Dragos wasn't thrilled about the modifications, but Dumbledore can be very persuasive. Harry turned to Charlie, suddenly serious. Why are you doing all this for me? Charlie crouched to Harry's level. Because every child deserves to be somewhere they're wanted, Harry. Somewhere safe. And right now, that's here with Blaze, and with me, if you'll have me as your guardian. Harry studied Charlie's face, searching for signs of deception. He'd learned early to be wary of adults who seemed too nice. But all he saw was sincerity. I'd like that, Harry said quietly. Blaze rumbled agreement, nudging Harry's shoulder. Excellent. Charlie clapped his hands together. Now, we have a busy schedule ahead. You need clothes, books, and basic wizard education. Blaze needs training. And I need to teach you both how to live safely among dragons. Can we fly? Harry asked eagerly, thinking of the dragons he'd seen soaring overhead. Charlie laughed. Eventually, yes. But Blaze needs to grow a bit more first, and you need to learn a lot about dragon handling before I let either of you off the ground. Harry nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. Don't worry, Charlie added with a wink. Dragons grow fast. I suspect you'll be in the air sooner than you think. The next few weeks passed in a blur of new experiences. Harry learned about dragon care, basic magic theory, and life at the reserve. Charlie proved to be a patient teacher, never scolding when Harry asked too many questions, something the Dursleys had punished him for regularly. Blaze grew at an astonishing rate, adding nearly a foot in length and filling out with muscle. The dragon handlers monitored her development with fascination, noting how the bond with Harry seemed to accelerate her growth while enhancing her intelligence. "She understands complex instructions now," Helena observed one afternoon as Blaze carefully sorted between different types of meat based on Charlie's instructions. "That's advanced cognition for a dragon this young." "Harry's influence," Charlie suggested. "Their magic is intertwined." Harry himself was changing too. The regular meals and active lifestyle had already added healthy weight to his skinny frame. More striking were the subtle magical changes. His temperature ran warmer than normal, and small flames occasionally danced across his fingertips when he was excited. "Dragon magic," Director Dragos explained when consulted. "The bond is allowing you to channel some of her natural abilities." Fascinating. Not everyone at the reserve welcomed their presence. Some handlers kept their distance, muttering about the danger of having a child bonded to a notoriously aggressive dragon species. Others seemed more concerned about Harry's celebrity status and what it might mean for the reserve. "Politicians will interfere," Harry overheard one senior handler complaining. "The boy who lived should be properly educated in Britain, not running wild with dragons." But most of the staff warmed to them, especially after seeing how Blaze's behavior differed from typical Horntails. She remained protective of Harry but showed none of the territorial aggression toward handlers who approached respectfully. 1 month after Harry's arrival, the inevitable political storm broke. Officials from the British Ministry of Magic arrived unannounced, led by a stern-looking witch introduced as Amelia Bones and a pompous man named Cornelius Fudge. "We're here to evaluate the situation," Fudge announced importantly. "The ministry has concerns about Mr. Potter's welfare and education." Harry and Blaze were summoned to Director Dragos's office, where Charlie stood protectively beside them. Blaze, now the size of a small horse, barely fit through the doorway. "As you can see," Charlie said calmly after introductions were complete, "Harry is thriving here. Regular health checkups, proper nutrition, education appropriate to his age, and of course, specialized training regarding his unique bond." Amelia Bones studied Harry thoughtfully. "Mr. Potter, are you happy here?" Harry nodded vigorously. "Yes, ma'am. Charlie teaches me lots of things. And I get to be with Blaze." "Yes, about that," Fudge interrupted, eyeing the dragon nervously. "This arrangement seems highly irregular and potentially dangerous. Hungarian Horntails are Class XXXXX creatures." "With respect, Minister," Charlie countered, "this bond has fundamentally altered both Harry and Blaze. Traditional classifications don't apply here." "Rubbish," Fudge blustered. "A dragon is a dragon. The boy should be with proper guardians in Britain, attending a preparatory school before Hogwarts." Harry felt Blaze's anxiety spiking alongside his own. He placed a calming hand on her neck, focusing on their connection. "I'm staying," he said with quiet determination. "Now see here, young man," Fudge began. Amelia Bones raised a hand, silencing him. "Perhaps a demonstration would be appropriate. I'd like to see this bond in action." They moved outside to a training area. Charlie set up several challenges designed to showcase Harry and Blaze's connection. Harry demonstrated how he could feel Blaze's emotions, how they could communicate silently, how his own magic had begun showing dragon-like properties. Most impressively, when Charlie conjured illusory threats, Blaze responded not with wild aggression but with calculated protective measures, placing herself between Harry and danger without harming bystanders. "Remarkable," Amelia Bones murmured. "And you say this bond formed spontaneously?" "Completely unprecedented," Director Dragos confirmed. "Our research suggests it may be related to Harry's unusual magical core, shaped by surviving the killing curse." Fudge looked unsettled. "Be that as it may, a dragon reserve is no place for a child." "With respect, Minister," Charlie interjected, "separating them could be catastrophically dangerous." "The magical backlash alone, yes, Dumbledore explained the risks," Fudge waved dismissively. But surely arrangements could be made. The dragon confined while Potter attends school, supervised visits. A low growl rumbled from Blaze's throat. Temperature rising, Harry felt that same protective surge he'd experienced before, magic building between them. I wouldn't finish that thought, Charlie warned, noticing the golden threads brightening between boy and dragon. Amelia Bones placed a restraining hand on Fudge's arm. I believe we've seen enough, Minister. The bond is clearly genuine and potentially volatile if threatened. But, furthermore, she continued firmly, I'm satisfied that Mr. Potter's immediate welfare is being properly addressed here. The legal guardianship arrangement with Mr. Weasley appears appropriate under these exceptional circumstances. Fudge spluttered, but Amelia's authoritative tone left little room for argument. We will, of course, require regular reports, she added, addressing Charlie directly. And educational benchmarks must be met. Absolutely, Charlie agreed. We've already arranged for tutors in standard magical subjects alongside his specialized education here. Harry relaxed slightly, feeling the tension in their bond ease. Blaze settled, though she kept a suspicious eye on Fudge. Later, after the officials departed, Charlie found Harry sitting with Blaze by the cottage, watching the sunset paint the mountains. You handled that well, Charlie commented, joining them. Harry shrugged. They wanted to separate us. Many people will, Charlie said honestly. Your situation challenges a lot of assumptions about magic, about dragons, about how things should be. Why can't they just leave us alone? Harry asked. Charlie sighed. Because you're Harry Potter. And because what's happening between you and Blaze could change our understanding of magical bonds forever. He ruffled Harry's perpetually messy hair. But don't worry too much. You've got plenty of people on your side now. Harry leaned against Blaze's warm scales, processing this. Will I have to go to Hogwarts? When I'm older? That's a long way off, Charlie assured him. And a lot can happen in 6 years. Harry nodded, gazing at the dragon soaring in the distance. Charlie. Do you think my parents would be okay with this? With me being here instead of, wherever they planned? Charlie considered the question carefully. I never knew your parents personally, Harry. But everyone who did says they were remarkable people who valued courage and love above all else. He gestured to the bond between boy and dragon. This, what you and Blaze share, it's built on exactly those things. So yes, I think they'd be proud. Harry smiled, feeling Blaze's warm approval through their connection. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, the boy, the dragon, and the unlikely family they were building. 6 months into Harry's stay at the Romanian Dragon Reserve, visitors had become routine. Researchers came to study the unprecedented bond. Ministry officials made regular inspections. Even the occasional journalist tried to sneak in, though the reserve security quickly identified and removed them. But the arrival of the Weasley family was something entirely different. Charlie! Molly Weasley cried, engulfing her second-oldest son in a bone-crushing hug the moment she stepped out of the International Portkey arrival zone. Finally letting us visit. It's been too long. Arthur Weasley followed, looking around with fascinated eyes. Remarkable place, son. Simply remarkable. Behind them came a parade of red-headed children, Bill, home briefly from his curse-breaking job, Percy, looking important despite being only 13, the twins Fred and George, already eyeing everything with mischievous intent, Ron, wide-eyed at the dragons visible in the distance, and little Ginny, clutching a stuffed dragon and bouncing with excitement. Harry watched their arrival from a distance, suddenly shy. He'd heard so much about Charlie's family but hadn't expected to meet them all at once. It's okay, Charlie assured him, once he'd extracted himself from his mother's embrace. They're going to love you. Just be prepared for a lot of questions and probably some hugging. Harry nodded nervously. Beside him, Blaze shifted, now the size of a large horse and significantly more intimidating than when he'd first bonded with her. Through their connection, he felt her curiosity mingled with protective concern. "Charlie, is that," Molly began, spotting Harry and the dragon. "Yes, Mum. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Harry Potter and Blaise." The introduction sparked immediate chaos. The twins surged forward with identical grins before Arthur pulled them back. Percy adjusted his glasses importantly. Ron's jaw dropped open. And Ginny, after one wide-eyed look, promptly hid behind her mother. "My goodness," Molly breathed, taking in the sight of the small boy standing beside the increasingly imposing dragon. "Charlie, you didn't say that Blaise had grown so much?" "Yeah, Hungarian Horntails mature faster than most dragon species," Charlie explained, deliberately misunderstanding. "Harry, come meet everyone." Harry approached cautiously, Blaise moving alongside him. He felt overwhelmed by the sheer energy radiating from the large family. "Hello," he managed, waving awkwardly. "Harry dear," Molly said, clearly torn between rushing to hug him and staying a safe distance from Blaise. "We've heard so much about you. Is it true you can feel what the dragon feels?" Ron blurted out. "Ronald." Molly scolded. "Don't bombard him with questions the moment you meet." "Actually, yeah," Harry replied, warming to Ron's straightforward approach. "We share emotions and sometimes thoughts. It's brilliant." "Wicked," the twins said in unison. Over the next hour, the initial awkwardness dissolved as Harry found himself drawn into the Weasley family dynamic. They settled at an outdoor picnic area where Blaise could remain comfortably nearby while Harry interacted with his first-ever visitors his own age. Ron proved especially easy to talk to, bombarding Harry with questions about dragon life that Harry was eager to answer. The twins told jokes that had Harry laughing more than he could remember ever doing before. Percy attempted to quiz Harry on his academic progress, which Harry endured good-naturedly. Bill shared stories of curse-breaking in Egypt that captivated everyone, including Blaise, who listened with surprising attention. Only Ginny remained reserved, watching Harry from behind her brothers, occasionally working up the courage to ask a quiet question before retreating again. "She's usually not this shy," Ron explained in a stage whisper. "But she's heard stories about Harry Potter her whole life, so meeting you is weird for her." "Stories about me?" Harry asked, bewildered. "Of course." Ron looked surprised. "You're in books and everything. The Boy Who Lived. There's even a children's story series, total rubbish, making up adventures you supposedly had." Harry frowned. "That's strange." "Welcome to Wizard Celebrity," Charlie said, rejoining them after a lengthy conversation with his parents. "Speaking of which, how would you feel about showing everyone what you and Blaise can do? Nothing too intense, just some of the training exercises we've been working on." Harry brightened. "Can we do the fire circle?" Charlie considered. "If you're up for it. You've been getting more consistent with that one." The Weasleys gathered at the training field's observation area while Charlie set up safety wards. Blaise stretched her wings, clearly enjoying the chance to show off. "What we're going to demonstrate," Charlie explained to his family, "is the unique way Harry and Blaise's bond affects their magic. Normally, wizards and dragons have completely different magical systems, but in their case, there's overlap." Harry took position in the center of the field, Blaise beside him. He closed his eyes, focusing on their connection. The now familiar golden threads brightened, visible to everyone watching. "Ready?" he asked Blaise, both verbally and through their bond. The dragon rumbled assent. Harry raised his hands, feeling the warmth building inside him. Dragons naturally generated intense heat before breathing fire, a biological process supplemented by innate magic. Through their bond, Harry had gradually learned to tap into this process. Fire burst from Blaise's jaws, not in a destructive blast but in a controlled stream that circled the field. Simultaneously, smaller flames danced from Harry's fingertips, joining the larger fire and guiding its path. Together, they shaped the flames into a spiraling pattern, a dancing ribbon of fire that never touched the ground or grew out of control. The Weasleys gasped in appreciation. "Merlin's beard," Arthur whispered. "He's controlling dragon fire." "Not controlling," Charlie corrected. "Sharing. That's the key difference in this bond. It's not domination but partnership." After several impressive demonstrations, including a display of Harry's growing heat resistance and Blaze's enhanced cognitive abilities, the family returned to the picnic area for an enormous lunch Molly had packed. "He's too thin," she whispered loudly to Charlie. "Though better than when you first described him. Those muggles have much to answer for." Harry pretended not to hear, busying himself with feeding choice cuts of meat to Blaze while chatting with Ron. "Will you come visit us at the Burrow?" Ron asked. "That's our house. It's not as cool as a dragon reserve, but it's home." "I don't think Blaze would fit," Harry said doubtfully. "She could stay in the paddock," Ron suggested. "It's big enough." "We can't be that far apart," Harry explained. "The bond gets uncomfortable after about 50 meters, and painful beyond 100. "Blimey," Ron said. "So you're always together? Even when you sleep?" Harry nodded. "She has a space connected to my room. It was small at first, but they keep expanding it as she grows." "What about when you go to Hogwarts?" Ron pressed. "I'm going when I turn 11. We all do." It was the question that had hovered in the background of Harry's life at the reserve. Charlie and Director Dragos discussed it sometimes when they thought he couldn't hear. Dumbledore, who visited occasionally to check on his progress, never gave straight answers about it. "I don't know," Harry admitted. "Charlie says we'll figure something out when the time comes." "They'd have to let Blaze come too," Ron said confidently. "They couldn't separate you if it's dangerous." "Maybe," Harry said, not entirely convinced. The wizarding world, he was learning, didn't always make accommodations, even when necessary. The conversation shifted to Quidditch, which Ron explained with such enthusiasm that Harry couldn't help but be intrigued, despite having only seen people fly on brooms rather than trying it himself. As the afternoon wore on, Harry found himself increasingly comfortable with the Weasley family. They were loud, chaotic, and occasionally overwhelming, but also warm and genuinely interested in him, not just as the boy who lived or the kid bonded to a dragon, but as himself. Watching Ron bicker good-naturedly with his brothers, Harry felt a twinge of something he couldn't immediately identify. Through their bond, Blaze sent a questioning feeling. Longing, Harry realized. Family. He tried to explain the concept to Blaze through their connection, the idea of belonging with others of your kind, connected by more than just magic. Blaze considered this, then nudged Harry gently toward the Weasleys, a clear message: these could be your people too. As the visit concluded and the family prepared to take their portkey home, Molly pulled Harry into a gentle hug. "You must come stay with us when you can," she insisted. "Charlie says you're both making progress on short separations. Perhaps by next summer." "I'd like that," Harry said sincerely. "And you," she added, addressing Blaze directly despite her lingering nervousness, "are welcome too, though perhaps in the garden rather than the house." Blaze huffed what seemed suspiciously like a laugh. "They're nice," Harry told Charlie as they watched the Weasleys disappear with their portkey. "They're completely mental," Charlie corrected with affection. "But yes, nice too." Harry felt something settle inside him, a certainty that hadn't been there before. With Blaze beside him and connections forming to people who genuinely cared, the future looked brighter than he'd ever imagined possible on Privet Drive. That night, curled against Blaze's warm side in the expanded dragon quarters, he preferred sleeping here to his own bed most nights. Harry reflected on how much had changed in 6 short months. From unwanted nephew to dragon-bonded wizard. From cupboard to mountain reserve. From loneliness to belonging. Through their connection, he shared these thoughts with Blaze, who responded with sleepy contentment and absolute certainty that they were exactly where they were meant to be. As Harry drifted toward sleep, the golden threads of their bond pulsed gently in the darkness, a reminder of the extraordinary path that lay ahead, challenges and all. Chapter 2, Fire in the Blood. Harry Potter dangled his legs over the edge of the cliff, watching dragons soar through the valley below. 3 years at the Romanian Dragon Reserve had changed him completely. No longer the scrawny, frightened 5-year-old who'd accidentally apparated across Europe, the 8-year-old Harry projected quiet confidence, his green eyes bright behind new glasses Charlie had insisted on getting after the taped pair finally disintegrated. "Think we could join them today?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder. Behind him, Blaise lounged in the morning sun, her black scales gleaming. No longer pony-sized, the Hungarian Horntail now rivaled a city bus in length, her wingspan casting enormous shadows when extended. She opened one amber eye at Harry's question, sending a pulse of eagerness through their bond. "Ready when you are." The golden threads connecting them had become less visible over time, but the bond itself had only strengthened. Harry no longer needed words to understand Blaise's meaning, receiving impressions, images, and emotions directly. "You two plotting again?" Charlie called, climbing the path toward them with equipment slung over his shoulder. 3 years as Harry's guardian had added a few scars to his collection but hadn't diminished his good humor. "I recognize that look." "Just wondering if today's the day," Harry said, trying to sound casual. Charlie dropped his gear and gave Harry a measuring look. "For your first flight?" "I don't know. Blaise's saddle needs adjusting after that growth spurt last month." "We don't need a saddle," Harry countered. "The bond helps me stay balanced. We've practiced hover tests." "Hovering 10 feet up is different from flying through mountain passes," Charlie pointed out. "Besides, Director Dragos would have my head if I let you go without proper safety measures. Remember what happened with those ministry inspectors last month?" Harry groaned. "That wasn't my fault. Blaise was just showing off. And singed half their observation platform." Charlie grinned despite his scolding tone. "Look, I know you're both ready, but we need to do this by the book. The reserve's under enough scrutiny without the boy who lived plummeting from Dragonback into a ravine." Harry sighed but nodded. After 3 years, he'd learned to navigate the complex politics surrounding his unique situation. His very existence at the reserve remained controversial, a human child bonded to a dragon, developing abilities no one fully understood. "Fine. But you promised we'd try the fire casting exercises today," Harry reminded him. "And we will." Charlie rummaged through his gear. "But first, morning checkup." Harry submitted to the routine examination. Charlie placed monitoring charms, checking Harry's core temperature, consistently higher than normal humans, heart rate, and the bond's magical signature. "Still stable," Charlie confirmed. "Any discomfort during your separation test yesterday?" They'd been gradually stretching the distance Harry and Blaise could maintain between them without pain. What started as 50 meters had extended to nearly 200, progress, but nowhere near enough for traditional schooling arrangements. "A bit itchy after 10 minutes at full distance," Harry admitted. "But no actual pain." Charlie nodded, making notes. "Good improvement. Dumbledore will be pleased to hear it." "Has he made any progress with Hogwarts?" Harry asked, trying to sound unconcerned. The question of Harry's formal education loomed larger as his 11th birthday approached. While tutors handled standard magical subjects, everyone recognized the challenges his situation would present for traditional schooling. "Still negotiating," Charlie said vaguely. "But that's 3 years away. Plenty of time." Before Harry could press further, a commotion erupted below. Dragon handlers sprinted across the main compound, wands drawn. Alarm bells rang, the reserve's warning system. Charlie snapped to attention, all casual demeanor vanishing. "Stay here," he ordered, grabbing his emergency kit. "Don't move until I send word." He rushed down the path, leaving Harry and Blaise watching from their clifftop perch. "No way we're staying put," Harry muttered once Charlie was out of sight. Blaise rumbled agreement, lowering her wings so Harry could climb aboard her shoulders, a well-practiced movement after years together. Without a saddle, Harry gripped the ridge of protective spikes along her neck, positioning himself securely between her massive shoulder blades. "Just a reconnaissance flight," he told her. "Low altitude, like we practiced." Blaze's muscles tensed beneath him. Harry's heart pounded with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Though they'd done hover tests and short glides, this would be their first true flight together. "Now," he whispered. Blaze launched herself from the cliff edge, powerful wings catching the air. Harry's stomach lurched as they plummeted briefly before sweeping upward in a graceful arc. The wind rushed past, tearing at his clothes and hair. "Bloody brilliant," he shouted, exhilaration flooding through him and rebounding through the bond. Blaze trumpeted in agreement, releasing a short burst of flame. They circled high above the reserve, giving Harry a bird's-eye view of the situation below. Near the southeastern perimeter, handlers surrounded someone. 3 figures in dark cloaks, restrained and disarmed. "Intruders," Harry murmured, guiding Blaze lower with gentle pressure against her neck. As they descended, Harry noticed something disturbing. Several dragon enclosures stood open, their occupants agitated or missing entirely. Near the perimeter fence, a large transport wagon waited, magically concealed but visible from their aerial perspective. Poachers, Harry realized with growing anger. Dragon poaching had become more lucrative as restrictions tightened on harvesting parts from reserves. A single Hungarian Horntail heart could fetch thousands of galleons on the black market. Eggs commanded even higher prices. Blaze growled, sensing his anger and catching the scent of fear from dragons below. "We need to check the other enclosures," Harry decided. "The ones they've captured might still be nearby." They swept around the reserve's perimeter, staying high enough to avoid immediate detection. Near the eastern boundary, Harry spotted movement in the forest, more dark-cloaked figures escorting a sedated Welsh green dragon, bound in enchanted chains. "There," he pointed. Through their bond, he shared the image with Blaze, who banked sharply toward the forest. "We should get Charlie," Harry said, even as they dove toward the poachers. "But they might disappear before help arrives." Blaze's answer came as a surge of protective fury. The dragons at the reserve were her kin, in a way. Though solitary by nature, Hungarian Horntails maintained complex hierarchical awareness of their territories. An attack on the reserve was an attack on her domain. "Just a warning shot," Harry instructed as they approached. "No direct hits." He gripped tightly as Blaze opened her jaws, releasing a focused stream of fire that scorched the earth 20 feet ahead of the poachers. They stumbled backward, shouting in alarm as they spotted the Horntail descending toward them. "It's the Potter boy," one yelled, drawing his wand. Harry felt the spell coming before it launched, a stunner aimed not at him but at Blaze. Through their bond, he channeled a surge of protective magic. His palm burned as he extended his hand, intercepting the red jet of light with a shimmer of golden energy. The spell dissipated harmlessly against Harry's magical shield, an ability he discovered accidentally a year earlier and had been refining with Charlie's guidance. "Run," the lead poacher shouted to his companions. "Apparate back to the meeting point." Harry couldn't let them escape with the Welsh green. 3 years of intense magical development, fueled by his dragon bond, had given him abilities far beyond a normal 8-year-old wizard. Focusing intently, he extended both hands toward the poachers, drawing on the heat that constantly simmered in his core. Flames erupted from his fingertips, not wild or uncontrolled as in his early attempts, but focused into a ring of fire that encircled the poachers and their captive dragon. The men shouted in panic, attempting to apparate, only to find themselves blocked. "Anti-disapparition flames," Harry explained, unable to keep pride from his voice. "Charlie taught me last month." "You're not going anywhere." One poacher, more desperate than the others, fired a cutting curse toward Harry. Blaze roared, interposing her armored wing to deflect the spell before responding with a targeted blast of flame that incinerated the man's wand and set his sleeve ablaze. The commotion attracted attention. Within minutes, dragon handlers arrived on brooms, led by Charlie, whose expression shifted from panic to relief to exasperation upon seeing Harry and Blaze. "Merlin's saggy pants, Harry," he shouted as handlers moved in to apprehend the poachers. "I told you to stay put." They were stealing dragons, Harry defended, sliding down from Blaze's neck once they landed. "That Welsh green and probably others. There's a transport wagon hidden near the south fence." Charlie's anger deflated slightly. "How did you know where to look?" "We saw it from above," Harry explained. "The perimeter wards were breached in at least 3 places. And look," he pointed to marks on the bound Welsh green scales. "Those aren't standard sedation tags. Someone's been marking dragons for extraction." Charlie examined the tags, his expression darkening. "These are reserve markers. Only staff would have access to these." "Inside help," Harry concluded. "Mr. Potter." Director Dragos approached, his face thunderous. "Unauthorized flight. Engaging with dangerous criminals. What were you thinking?" "He was thinking about protecting the dragons when someone else wasn't," came a cool female voice. Helena Valerian, the reserve's lead researcher, strode toward them. In the 3 years since Harry's arrival, she'd become something of an advocate for him, fascinated by his developing abilities. "The security breach originated from within, Dragos," she continued, examining the markings Charlie had found. "These are your department's tags." The director's face flushed. "Are you accusing me of something, Valerian?" "I'm stating facts," she replied evenly. "Someone with high-level access has been aiding poachers. The question is who and for how long." Harry glanced between them, sensing long-standing tension. Through his bond with Blaze, he detected something else, the dragon's deep suspicion of Dragos himself. Dragons were excellent judges of character, their instincts honed by millennia of evolution. Blaze had never trusted the director. Charlie intervened before the argument escalated. "We need to secure the reserve and check every enclosure. Harry, take Blaze and warn the other dragons. They respond better to you anyway." Harry nodded, grateful for the task that removed him from the growing confrontation. He and Blaze took to the sky again, this time with official permission, circling the reserve to check each habitat. Through their bond, Blaze projected a warning to the other dragons: "Danger, intruders, stay alert." Most dragons acknowledged with varying degrees of understanding. The older, more intelligent species like the Ironbellies and Antipodean Opalies responded with sophisticated awareness, while younger dragons reacted more instinctively. They discovered 2 more instances of tampering, a sedated Hebridean black and missing eggs from a Chinese fireball nest. By the time they returned to the main compound, orders had arrived from both Romanian and British ministries. Mr. Potter, a tall, dark-skinned Auror greeted him with a nod. "Kingsley Shacklebolt. Professor Dumbledore speaks highly of your abilities." "Sir," Harry acknowledged, slightly uncomfortable with the scrutiny but maintaining the composure Charlie had helped him develop for official interactions. "I understand you discovered the poaching operation." Harry explained what he and Blaze had observed, careful to emphasize the facts without speculation. 3 years of political attention had taught him caution when dealing with authorities. "Impressive situational awareness," Shacklebolt commented. "And these fire abilities, they developed through your bond?" Harry nodded, holding up his palm where a small flame danced across his fingers. "I can control heat and fire to some extent. It's gotten stronger as Blaze grows." "Fascinating," Shacklebolt murmured. "And concerning to some, I imagine." Before Harry could respond, Charlie approached with Helena beside him, both looking grim. "They've taken Director Dragos for questioning," Charlie informed them quietly. "Found evidence in his office, correspondence with known black market dealers, financial records. He's been selling information about the reserve's most valuable dragons for at least a year." Harry felt Blaze's satisfaction rumbling through their bond. She'd never trusted Dragos. What happens now? Harry asked. Investigation continues, Shacklebolt answered. But your actions today likely prevented a major theft of protected species. Well done, Mr. Potter. Harry flushed slightly at the praise. It was mostly Blaze, he demurred. Don't sell yourself short, Helena said firmly. That fire containment spell was extraordinary magic for a wizard of any age, let alone an 8-year-old. The aftermath kept the reserve in turmoil for days. With Dragos removed, Helena stepped in as acting director. Security protocols were overhauled, staff were revetted, and the poachers faced trial before the International Confederation of Wizards' Magical Creature Protection Division. A week after the incident, Harry sat with Charlie on their cottage porch, watching Blaze hunt in the valley below. The Horntail had grown too large for her original enclosure, now claiming a section of the reserve as her territory while maintaining her close bond with Harry. Dumbledore's coming tomorrow, Charlie mentioned casually, though Harry caught the underlying tension in his voice. Because of what happened with the poachers. Charlie nodded. Partly that. Your magical display caught attention, both good and bad. The Aurors were impressed, but the Ministry's getting nervous about your development. Harry frowned, absently conjuring a small flame in his palm, a habit when he was thinking. Why? I help stop criminals. Because you're not developing like a normal wizard child. Charlie sighed. Your magic is evolving differently, influenced by your bond with Blaze. Some traditionalists find that unsettling. They're afraid of me, Harry realized, extinguishing the flame. Not afraid, exactly, Charlie hedged, though his expression suggested otherwise. More concerned about unprecedented abilities in a wizard so young, especially one with your particular history. The boy who lived, bonded to a Hungarian Horntail, developing fire magic. Harry understood how that might worry people who remembered Voldemort's reign of terror. Will they try to separate us again? Harry asked, the old fear surfacing. Charlie shook his head firmly. No. That battle's been won. But they will push for more structured education, more oversight. Dumbledore's been holding them off, but after this incident. Harry absorbed this silently, gazing at Blaze's distant form. Through their bond, he sensed her awareness of his concern. We could run, he suggested half-seriously. Find a remote mountain somewhere. Dragons are good at hiding. Charlie laughed. And deny the wizarding world their celebrity dragon boy? The press would hunt you forever. His expression softened. Besides, running would only convince them they're right to be worried. Better to face this head-on. Harry nodded, knowing Charlie was right. So what do we do? We show Dumbledore exactly how your abilities work, controlled, purposeful, beneficial. We emphasize the progress you've made in both traditional studies and your unique skills. Charlie grinned suddenly. And maybe we finally let you two officially fly together. Nothing impresses like a boy and his dragon soaring in perfect harmony. Harry's eyes lit up. Seriously? No more hover tests and glide practice? You've earned it, Charlie confirmed. Besides, you've already flown in combat. Can't exactly put that dragon back in the egg, can we? Harry whooped with excitement, sending a surge of joy through the bond that had Blaze looking up from her hunt, answering with a distant roar. Albus Dumbledore arrived the following morning, resplendent in midnight blue robes spangled with silver stars. Despite the serious purpose of his visit, his eyes twinkled with their usual good humor as he greeted Harry. My dear boy, he said warmly. Quite an adventure you've had recently. Seems trouble finds you regardless of geography. Or I find it, Harry replied with a small smile. They met in the reserve's conference room, where Charlie had prepared demonstrations of Harry's educational progress. Standard subjects, arithmetic, literacy, magical theory, history, alongside his specialized dragon studies and unique magical development. His academic work is on par with or exceeding expectations for his age, Charlie explained, displaying Harry's recent assessments. The tutors you arranged have been excellent. And his more unusual abilities? Dumbledore inquired, examining a chart tracking Harry's magical development. Instead of answering directly, Charlie nodded to Harry. Show him. Harry took a deep breath, centering himself. Over 3 years, he'd learned to access different aspects of his dragon-influenced magic. Heat manipulation came most naturally. He extended his hand, palm up, conjuring a small flame that danced across his fingers without burning him. Basic fire manipulation, Harry explained, increasing the flame's size before compressing it into a tight, intensely hot blue ball. I can control temperature, shape, and intensity. Dumbledore watched with fascinated attention as Harry demonstrated progressively more complex fire manipulations, splitting the flame into multiple controlled points, changing its colors, even forming it into recognizable shapes. Most impressive, Dumbledore murmured. And does this extend beyond your immediate proximity? Harry nodded. I can project flame up to about 50 feet now, and create fire barriers or containment fields like I used against the poachers. Heat resistance as well, I understand. In answer, Harry walked to the fireplace, reached directly into the flames, and retrieved a burning log, holding it casually before returning it to the fire. My temperature tolerance increases yearly, he explained. I don't burn easily, and I can withstand much hotter environments than most wizards. And your connection to other dragons? This was newer territory. Harry described how he and Blaise had warned the reserve's dragons about the poachers. It's not like I can speak directly to them, he clarified. But through Blaise, I can send impressions, feelings, simple concepts. The smarter dragons understand more clearly. Extraordinary, Dumbledore said softly. A form of cross-species communication not documented since the ancient dragon mages of Wales. Harry perked up at this. Dragon mages? You've mentioned them before, but I couldn't find much in the books you sent. Because little concrete information remains, Dumbledore explained. Primarily legends from the early medieval period, describing wizards who formed special bonds with dragons, developing unique magical abilities as a result. Most modern scholars dismiss these accounts as exaggerations or myths. But you don't, Harry stated, recognizing something in Dumbledore's tone. The headmaster smiled. I have found that magic often transcends our limited understanding. What is impossible in one era becomes fundamental in the next. He gestured to Harry. You, my boy, are living proof of possibilities previously relegated to legend. Harry absorbed this, feeling a strange mixture of pride and apprehension. So when the Ministry worries about me, they fear what they do not understand, Dumbledore confirmed. Human nature, magical or muggle, remains consistent in that regard. Charlie cleared his throat. We've arranged a practical demonstration as well, if you'd like to observe Harry and Blaise's flight capabilities. Dumbledore's eyes brightened. I would be delighted. They moved to an open training area where Blaise waited impatiently, sensing Harry's excitement through their bond. A modified dragon-riding saddle, rarely used in modern times except for certain research purposes, had been fitted to her shoulders. Most riders require extensive restraints and protective gear, Charlie explained as Harry approached Blaise. Harry needs minimal equipment due to their bond. Harry stroked Blaise's scales affectionately before mounting with practiced ease, settling into the specially designed saddle. Through their connection, he felt her anticipation matching his own. Finally, her impression came clearly. Open sky. We'll do a demonstration flight around the reserve perimeter, Charlie told Dumbledore. Showing maneuverability, speed control, and their synchronized fire abilities. Harry barely heard them, focused entirely on Blaise and the imminent flight. At Charlie's signal, Blaise launched skyward with powerful strokes of her massive wings. The ground fell away as they climbed into the clear mountain air. For Harry, nothing compared to flying with Blaise. The freedom, the connection, the sheer exhilaration of soaring thousands of feet above the earth, it transcended any other experience. Through their bond, Blaise's natural joy in flight amplified his own emotions. They circled the reserve's perimeter, demonstrating tight turns, rapid dives, and controlled ascents. Harry guided Blaze with minimal physical cues, their minds so attuned that intentions flowed seamlessly between them. For their finale, they showcased their synchronized fire abilities. Blaze released a massive stream of flame while Harry extended his hand, splitting and redirecting the fire into complex patterns that danced across the sky, dragons, phoenixes, and finally, the Hogwarts crest, which Harry had studied from Charlie's old school trunk. Landing to applause from the gathered staff, Harry dismounted flushed with triumph and exertion. Even Dumbledore clapped appreciatively, his eyes twinkling. "Magnificent," the headmaster declared. "Truly remarkable coordination and control." "So you see," Charlie said pointedly, "Harry's abilities are developing responsibly, with proper supervision. His bond with Blaze enhances rather than destabilizes his magic." Dumbledore nodded thoughtfully. "Indeed. Though questions remain about his long-term magical development and education." He addressed Harry directly. "You understand, Harry, that your situation presents unique challenges for traditional schooling arrangements." Because Blaze can't come to Hogwarts, Harry stated the obvious concern. "Current regulations would certainly prohibit it," Dumbledore agreed. "Though rules, I have found, can sometimes be re-examined when circumstances warrant." Hope flared in Harry's chest. "You mean Blaze might be allowed to come with me?" "I mean," Dumbledore clarified carefully, "that we have 3 years to explore possibilities. Precedent exists for exceptional accommodations when magical necessity demands it." It wasn't a promise, but it was more than Harry had dared hope for previously. "In the meantime," Dumbledore continued, "I believe we should expand your education further. Your tutors report excellent progress in standard subjects, but your unique abilities require specialized guidance." "What kind of guidance?" Charlie asked cautiously. "I propose quarterly assessments at Hogwarts," Dumbledore explained. "Brief visits, within your separation tolerance, where Hogwarts faculty can evaluate Harry's magical development and provide targeted instruction." "Blaze would need to remain just outside the grounds," Harry said, calculating distances in his mind. Dumbledore nodded. "The edge of the Forbidden Forest would be within your current separation tolerance, I believe. And provide sufficient space for a dragon of her size." Harry exchanged looks with Charlie, who appeared cautiously optimistic. "It would give the Hogwarts staff a chance to know you," Charlie pointed out. "Build relationships before any decisions about your formal education. And perhaps," Dumbledore added with a twinkle, "help certain ministry officials become more comfortable with your unique circumstances when they see your abilities properly contextualized." Harry recognized the political maneuvering but appreciated it nonetheless. "I'd like that," he decided. "Excellent." Dumbledore clapped his hands together. "We shall arrange the first visit for next month, after the school year begins. Professor McGonagall is particularly interested in meeting you." After finalizing details for Harry's visits to Hogwarts, Dumbledore departed, leaving Harry and Charlie to discuss this new development. "It's progress," Charlie said as they walked back to their cottage. "Dumbledore's creating a middle path, not forcing traditional education on you immediately, but gradually integrating you into the wizarding educational system." Harry nodded, processing. "Do you think they'll ever actually let Blaze come to Hogwarts?" Charlie sighed. "Honestly, it's unprecedented. But then again, so is your entire situation." He ruffled Harry's perpetually messy hair. "If anyone can change the rules, it's you two." The quarterly visits to Hogwarts began the following month, marking a new phase in Harry's education. Each visit lasted approximately 6 hours, the maximum time he and Blaze could comfortably maintain their current separation distance. While Harry worked with various professors inside the castle, Blaze remained at the forest's edge, typically with Hagrid, the groundskeeper, who had overcome his initial terror of the Horntail to develop a respectful fascination. "Magnificent creature," Hagrid would say each time, offering Blaze various treats he'd prepared specially. "Got more sense than most dragons too." Knows exactly when you need to head back to Harry. The Hogwarts staff varied in their reactions to Harry's unique abilities. Professor McGonagall maintained professional objectivity while testing his transfiguration aptitude, though Harry occasionally caught her watching his casual fire manipulation with carefully concealed amazement. Professor Flitwick approached Harry's education with enthusiastic curiosity, developing specialized charms exercises that complemented his dragon-influenced magic. Your natural affinity for fire should translate beautifully to other elemental charms, the tiny professor squeaked during one session. The key is to understand the underlying magical principles rather than just the manifestations. Professor Snape, however, made no attempt to hide his skepticism. Celebrity status and a pet dragon do not exempt you from precision and discipline, he drawled during Harry's first potions assessment. Fire manipulation is crude magic compared to the subtle science of potion making. Despite Snape's prickly demeanor, Harry found he actually enjoyed potions. The careful measurements and precise techniques provided a different kind of challenge from his more instinctual fire magic. Between Hogwarts visits and his regular studies at the reserve, Harry's 8th year passed in a whirlwind of educational advancement and magical development. The poacher incident had elevated his status among the dragon handlers, who now treated him with a mixture of respect and protective camaraderie. Blaise continued her impressive growth, approaching full maturity faster than typical for her species, a side effect, Helena theorized, of the magical bond accelerating her development. By Harry's 9th birthday, she had reached nearly full adult size, a 40-foot behemoth whose roars echoed through the mountain valleys and whose fire could melt stone. Yet for all her terrifying power, she remained gentle with Harry, their bond deepening beyond mere magical connection into something approaching true telepathic communication. Harry could now receive not just impressions but occasional word concepts from Blaise, while she demonstrated understanding of increasingly complex human ideas. Danger coming, she projected one crisp autumn morning as Harry prepared for their daily flight. Harry paused, alert to her warning. What kind of danger? Images flashed through their connection, unfamiliar wizards, observation, secrecy. Not the immediate threat of poachers, but something more subtle. Someone's watching us. Harry interpreted, scanning the nearby ridgelines. Confirmation flowed through their bond, along with a location, the northern perimeter, partially concealed by a stand of pines. Harry nodded, mounting quickly. Let's check it out. They launched skyward, appearing to begin a normal training flight before banking casually toward the northern boundary. As they approached the location Blaise had indicated, Harry spotted them, 3 figures in dark traveling cloaks, using magical binoculars to observe the reserve. Not attempting concealment, Harry guided Blaise into a hover directly above the watchers. Their startled faces turned upward as the massive dragon's shadow fell over them. Can I help you? Harry called down, trying to sound more confident than his 9 years might warrant. The watchers conferred hurriedly before the tallest stepped forward, lowering his hood to reveal a stern-faced wizard with close-cropped gray hair. Mr. Potter, he called up. Department of Magical Creature Regulation. We're conducting a scheduled observation. Funny, Harry replied. Acting Director Valerian didn't mention any scheduled observations today. The man's expression tightened. Our department doesn't always coordinate with local management. Standard procedure. Harry felt Blaise's skepticism matching his own. After the poaching incident, reserve security had been completely overhauled. No legitimate ministry observation would occur without prior notification. I'll escort you to the administration building, Harry offered innocently. Helena will want to hear your report directly. The watchers exchanged glances before the spokesman shook his head. That won't be necessary. We've completed our assessment. With that, the 3 apparat away before Harry could respond. Definitely not ministry, Harry muttered to Blaise as they circled the now empty clearing. Blaise rumbled agreement, sharing his suspicion. Since the poacher incident, Harry had become more aware of the various factions interested in his development. Beyond the official ministry oversight, others watched from the shadows, those concerned about the boy who lives unconventional upbringing, those interested in the unprecedented human-dragon bond, and occasionally, those with connections to darker elements of the wizarding world. They reported the encounter to Helena, who increased security patrols along that boundary. "Your situational awareness is becoming quite valuable," she commented. "Between you and Blaze, we have better surveillance than most of our detection charms." Indeed, Harry and Blaze had developed an informal role as the reserve's aerial security team, conducting daily patrol flights that combined training exercises with boundary monitoring. The other dragons had grown accustomed to their presence, with many of the more intelligent species actively communicating with Blaze during these patrols. On one such patrol, shortly after Harry's 9th birthday, they discovered something unexpected: a young girl sitting alone on a rocky outcropping near the visitor observation area, apparently separated from her tour group. Harry guided Blaze down for a closer look. The girl appeared about his age, with dark curly hair and an expression of fascination rather than fear as the enormous Hungarian Horntail landed nearby. "Are you lost?" Harry called, sliding from Blaze's back. The girl shook her head. "Waiting for my father. He's meeting with researchers." Her eyes widened as she took in the sight of a boy dismounting a dragon most wizards wouldn't approach without a team of handlers. "You're Harry Potter." Harry nodded, used to recognition by now. "And you are?" "Elara Nystrom," she replied, approaching cautiously but with obvious curiosity. "My father's a magizoologist studying magical bonds." "Your case is why we're here." Harry tensed slightly. "Your father's studying me?" "Not exactly you," Elara clarified. "The phenomenon of human-dragon bonding. He's been corresponding with Helena Valerian for months." She gestured to Blaze with unmistakable admiration. "She's magnificent. Hungarian Horntails are apex predators with the highest classification of danger, yet she lets you ride her." Harry relaxed slightly, recognizing genuine interest rather than the clinical observation he sometimes received from researchers. "We've been bonded since I was 5. Blaze was much smaller then. But the bond grew as she did," Elara said with understanding beyond her years. "Father says magical bonds adapt and evolve based on the needs and development of both participants." Harry studied her with new interest. Most children he encountered, typically during supervised visits to the reserve's educational center, asked simplistic questions about what dragons ate or how hot their fire burned. Elara spoke with the vocabulary and conceptual understanding of someone immersed in magical creature study. "Your dad studies magical bonds professionally?" Elara nodded. "All types. Familiar bonds, life debts, magical contracts. But yours is unique in modern records." She hesitated before asking eagerly, "Could I touch her? If she allows it?" Harry hadn't expected that request. Few people voluntarily approached Blaze, whose fearsome appearance typically inspired the opposite reaction. "It's up to her," he said, glancing at Blaze. Through their bond, he felt her curious assessment of the girl, not threat, not fear, interesting small human. Blaze lowered her massive head, bringing one amber eye level with Elara. "Move slowly," Harry advised. "Let her sniff your hand first." With remarkable composure, Elara extended her hand palm forward, standing perfectly still as Blaze's nostrils flared, taking in her scent. After a moment's consideration, the dragon nudged her snout against the girl's palm. Elara's face lit with wonder. "She's warm. And the scales feel different than I expected, smoother. Hungarian Horntails have some of the most heat-resistant scales of any dragon species," Harry explained, falling into the educational role he sometimes played for reserve visitors. "The overlapping pattern creates natural armor while maintaining flexibility. And the heat comes from their internal fire sacs," Elara added knowledgeably. "Father says dragons maintain elevated body temperatures even when not actively producing flame." Their conversation continued, Elara asking increasingly sophisticated questions about Harry's bond with Blaze, their communication methods, and the magical effects he'd experienced. Harry found himself enjoying the interaction, It wasn't often he spoke with someone his own age who understood his world. "There you are, Elara," a man's voice called. A tall wizard with the same dark curly hair approached, looking momentarily alarmed at the sight of his daughter standing beside a Hungarian Horntail before recognition dawned. "Mr. Potter, I presume?" "Henrik Nystrom. Your reputation precedes you." After introductions and assurances that Elara had been perfectly safe, Henrik explained their presence at the reserve. "I'm documenting cases of exceptional magical bonds worldwide," he explained. "When Helena described your situation, I knew I had to include it in my research. With your permission, of course." "What kind of research?" Harry asked cautiously, having learned to be wary of those too eager to study his abilities. "Purely academic," Henrik assured him. "I believe magical bonds represent one of our most understudied areas of magic, with practical applications ranging from healing to protective enchantments." Their conversation was cut short when Charlie arrived, having noticed Harry's unscheduled landing near the visitor area. "Making friends?" he asked with a pointed look that suggested they'd discuss unauthorized visitor interaction later. "Dr. Nystrom has ministry clearance," Elara piped up, correctly interpreting Charlie's concern. "Level 3 research authorization signed by Amelia Bones herself." Charlie raised an eyebrow, impressed by the girl's awareness of security protocols. "Nevertheless, we have procedures for research interviews, especially those involving Harry." Arrangements were made for a proper meeting the following day, with all necessary permissions and supervision. As they parted, Elara turned to Harry with a bright smile. "Maybe you could show me how you fly together tomorrow. Father's always saying observation beats theory." "If it's approved," Harry agreed, finding himself hoping it would be. The Nystroms ended up staying at the reserve for 2 weeks, during which Harry found his first real friendship with someone his own age. Elara's understanding of magical creatures and genuine interest in his bond with Blaze made conversations easy, while her adventurous spirit matched his own. Under supervision, Harry demonstrated various aspects of his connection with Blaze: flight patterns, fire manipulation, their developing communication. Henrik documented everything meticulously, treating Harry not as a test subject but as a collaborator, explaining his observations and theories as they progressed. "The magical resonance between you is stronger than any familiar bond I've documented," Henrik noted during one session. "More akin to certain ancient magical partnerships described in Welsh and Romanian folklore." "Dumbledore mentioned dragon mages," Harry said, curious if Henrik shared this theory. Henrik nodded thoughtfully. "The historical records are fragmentary, but yes, there are similarities. Those accounts describe wizards who could share sensory experiences with dragons, manipulate fire, and even adopt certain draconic magical resistances, much as you're demonstrating." "So I'm not completely unique?" Harry asked, finding the idea both relieving and slightly disappointing. "Unique in our time, certainly," Henrik clarified. "But magic often moves in cycles. Abilities emerge, become rare or forgotten, then re-emerge generations later when conditions align properly." This perspective, that Harry's abilities had historical precedent rather than being completely anomalous, provided a framework that Harry found comforting. He wasn't just a magical oddity but perhaps the modern expression of an ancient magical tradition. When the Nystroms finally departed, Harry felt the absence keenly. Letters began flowing between him and Elara, exchanging information about their studies and daily lives. Her family traveled extensively for Henrik's research, giving Elara a worldly perspective that fascinated Harry, whose own experiences remained largely centered on the reserve despite his quarterly Hogwarts visits. "You miss having friends your age," Charlie observed after catching Harry eagerly reading Elara's latest letter. "Maybe we should arrange more social interactions with wizard children." Harry shrugged. "Most kids just want to see me ride Blaze or ask about being famous. Elara's different." Charlie nodded understanding. "Still, developing friendships will be important, especially as we figure out your Hogwarts arrangements. 2 more years isn't that long." The reminder of his approaching school age brought mixed feelings. Harry loved life at the reserve but recognized that his education would eventually require more than tutors and quarterly visits could provide. "Has Dumbledore made any progress with the school governors?" Harry asked. Charlie hesitated. "Some. They've acknowledged the bond can't be broken and are considering accommodations. But a dragon at Hogwarts remains controversial. Even if she stays in the forest. We can manage the distance now. It's complicated politically," Charlie explained. "Some families would protest, claiming special treatment or safety concerns." Harry frowned. "It's not special treatment if it's necessary." "I know that, and Dumbledore knows that," Charlie assured him. "But change comes slowly in the wizarding world, especially at institutions as traditional as Hogwarts." This conversation lingered in Harry's mind as he continued his education throughout his 9th year. His quarterly visits to Hogwarts took on new significance as he paid closer attention to the school itself, the sprawling grounds, the forest that might someday house Blaise, the curious students who watched from windows when he arrived. During one such visit, Harry was introduced to Professor Quirrell, the Muggle studies teacher who would be switching to defense against the dark arts the following year. "Fascinating abilities you have, Mr. Potter," Quirrell stammered, observing Harry's fire manipulation demonstration. "Such power at your command already." Something about Quirrell's gaze made Harry uncomfortable, an intensity behind the nervous exterior that Blaise noticed too, sending warning impressions despite being stationed at the forest's edge. Harry mentioned this to Charlie later, who promised to relay the concern to Dumbledore, though he cautioned against reading too much into first impressions. "Not everyone comfortable with dragons or unusual magical abilities," Charlie reminded him. "Quirrell's always been a bit high-strung from what I remember of my school days." As Harry approached his 10th birthday, his magical development continued its unusual trajectory. Beyond fire manipulation, he discovered an increasing affinity for other forms of elemental magic, wind currents during flight, earth energies that dragons naturally sensed, even water in certain contexts. "Your magic is adapting to enhance your partnership with Blaise," Helena theorized during one of their regular assessments. "Dragons possess instinctual elemental magic that most humans can only access through structured spells. Your bond is bridging that gap." These developments both fascinated and concerned the various authorities monitoring Harry's progress. His quarterly assessment visits began including ministry observers alongside Hogwarts professors, their expressions ranging from wonder to unease as Harry demonstrated abilities that continued expanding beyond typical wizarding development. The ministry's growing nervous, Charlie confided after one particularly intense observation session. "Your capabilities are developing faster than they anticipated. Some factions are pushing for more direct oversight. They're still afraid I'll turn dark or something?" Harry asked, frustrated by the persistent undercurrent of suspicion. "Not exactly afraid," Charlie said carefully. "More, uncertain. You're developing magic that doesn't fit their categorization systems, influenced by a creature most wizards consider dangerous. It challenges their understanding of how magic should work." Harry understood the concern conceptually but found it increasingly irritating in practice. The constant scrutiny, the thinly veiled warnings about responsible use of power, the implied comparison to other powerful wizards who had chosen darker paths, all reinforced his appreciation for the reserve's relative freedom. Blaise shared his frustration, her own intelligence continuing to develop alongside their bond. Through their connection, her thoughts had become increasingly structured, approaching language rather than just impressions. "Small-minded humans," came her assessment after one particularly invasive ministry examination. "Fear what they cannot control." Not all of them, Harry reminded her as they soared above the mountains, escaping the confines of observation and documentation. "Charlie understands. Helena too. And Dumbledore. Few understand. Many fear. Be watchful." Her warning proved prescient when, 3 weeks before Harry's 10th birthday, the reserve received unexpected visitors, a delegation from the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures, led by a toad-faced woman with a sickly sweet voice. Dolores Umbridge, senior undersecretary to the minister, she introduced herself to Charlie and Helena, barely acknowledging Harry despite him being the obvious reason for her visit. We're conducting a comprehensive safety assessment following concerns about certain arrangements here. What concerns specifically? Helena asked coolly, having assumed the permanent directorship after Dragos's removal and subsequent imprisonment. Umbridge's smile didn't reach her eyes. Concerns about appropriate development protocols for Class XXXXX creatures and their interactions with minors. The Ministry has a responsibility to ensure all magical creature facilities maintain proper containment and safety standards. The implication was clear, this was about Harry and Blaise, disguised as a general inspection. Over the next 3 days, Umbridge and her team scrutinized every aspect of Harry's living arrangements, educational program, and especially his bond with Blaise. Unlike previous assessments, which focused on understanding the bond's nature and Harry's magical development, this inspection carried a distinct undertone of looking for problems to document. The dragon displays concerning territorial behaviors, Umbridge noted after observing Blaise growl at one of her assistants who approached Harry too aggressively. Aggression toward humans represents a significant safety violation under Regulation 17b. Hungarian Horntails are naturally protective of their bonded companions, Charlie explained patiently. Blaise has shown remarkable restraint considering your assistant's provocative approach. Umbridge made a small, hem noise that Harry quickly learned preceded her most unpleasant comments. Mr. Weasley, surely you understand that children cannot be permitted to maintain proximity with creatures that demonstrate any aggressive tendencies. The Ministry's responsibility to magical youth cannot be subordinated to research interests. Harry, listening nearby, felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. Through their bond, Blaise picked up his anxiety, sending reassurance tinged with her own dislike of the pink-clad woman. The inspection culminated in a formal demonstration of Harry and Blaise's abilities, their flight coordination, fire manipulation, and communication methods. Unlike previous observers who expressed amazement at these demonstrations, Umbridge watched with thinly disguised revulsion. Unnatural, Harry overheard her murmur to an assistant. The boy's magic is clearly being corrupted by prolonged exposure. Minister Fudge will need to be briefed immediately. That evening, an emergency meeting convened in Helena's office. Charlie, Helena, Harry, and to Harry's surprise, Dumbledore, who had apparated upon receiving Charlie's urgent message. She's going to recommend separation, Charlie said grimly once privacy wards were established. I recognize the approach, document safety concerns, cite obscure regulations, then push for immediate intervention, for the child's protection. She cannot separate them, Dumbledore stated calmly. The magical consequences would be catastrophic, as has been thoroughly documented by multiple independent experts. Umbridge doesn't care about magical consequences, Helena countered. She cares about control and ministry authority. The report I've glimpsed focuses on Harry's abnormal magical development and concerning draconic influences as threats to his future integration into proper wizarding society. Harry listened silently, anger and fear building equally. After nearly 5 years with Blaise, the idea of separation was unthinkable, not just emotionally but magically. Their bond had become fundamental to his very core. What are our options? Charlie asked. Legally, we stand on solid ground, Dumbledore assured them. The original guardianship arrangements were properly filed with both British and Romanian magical authorities. Multiple expert testimonies confirm the bond's unbreakable nature. Even the International Confederation's Magical Being Division has classified this as a protected magical symbiosis. But politically? Helena pressed. Dumbledore sighed. Politically, we face opposition from traditionalist factions who find the bond disturbing. Minister Fudge is particularly susceptible to such influences, fearing anything that might destabilize his administration. Harry cleared his throat, drawing their attention. Shouldn't I have some say in this? It's my life they're trying to control. The adults exchanged glances, Dumbledore's eyes twinkling slightly. Indeed you should, Harry, he agreed. And I believe your perspective may provide us the solution we need. The following morning, when Umbridge arrived to deliver her preliminary findings, she found not just Helena and Charlie waiting, but Dumbledore and, most significantly, Harry standing confidently beside Blaise. Hem, Umbridge began, momentarily flustered by Dumbledore's presence. This is an official ministry inspection debrief. I'm not certain all these parties should be present. As Mr. Potter is the primary subject of your concerns, his presence seems not only appropriate but necessary, Dumbledore replied pleasantly. As his magical guardian, I have authorized his participation. Umbridge's smile tightened further, but she proceeded to outline her findings, a litany of alleged safety violations, developmental concerns, and regulatory infractions, culminating in her recommendation. Therefore, it is the Ministry's position that temporary separation is required for proper assessment of Mr. Potter's uncontaminated magical capabilities. The dragon will be relocated to a specialized containment facility while, No, Harry interrupted firmly. Umbridge blinked in surprise. I beg your pardon. I said no, Harry repeated, meeting her gaze steadily. I won't be separated from Blaise. Not temporarily, not for assessment, not for any reason. Mr. Potter, Umbridge said with forced sweetness, children do not dictate ministry safety protocols. This arrangement is clearly influencing your developing magic in concerning ways. Harry raised his hand, palm up, conjuring a perfectly controlled flame that danced across his fingers. You mean this? Or this? The flame shifted, splitting into multiple points that circled his hand before reforming. My magic isn't being corrupted. It's evolving in response to my bond with Blaise. Precisely our concern, Umbridge snapped, dropping the sweet pretense. Draconic influence on human magic is unnatural and potentially dangerous. Actually, Dumbledore interjected mildly, historical precedent exists for such magical development. The dragon mages of Wales demonstrated similar abilities, documented in the historical archives of the Wizengamot itself. Ancient legends, Umbridge dismissed. Hardly relevant to modern magical regulation. Perhaps a more practical demonstration then, Harry suggested, an idea forming. You're concerned about safety. Let me show you what this bond actually means for protection. Before Umbridge could object, Harry nodded to Charlie, who activated a training sequence they had prepared. Illusory threats, designed to test Harry and Blaise's defensive capabilities, materialized around the observation area. What followed was a carefully choreographed demonstration of precisely what Harry and Blaise's bond offered. Rather than wild, destructive power, they showcased controlled, protective magic, containment fields that isolated threats without collateral damage, defensive shields that could protect bystanders, precision fire manipulation that neutralized dangers with minimal force. Most impressively, Harry demonstrated how their bond enhanced his awareness of magical signatures, allowing him to identify concealed threats before they manifested, a capability that had proven crucial during the poacher incident. This is what you call corruption? Harry asked Umbridge when they finished, not bothering to hide his contempt. These abilities helped save dragons from poachers. They protect the reserve. They could protect other wizards too. And should the need arise, Dumbledore added quietly, such abilities might prove invaluable against darker threats. The implication hung in the air, Harry's unique magic could someday serve greater purposes than anyone in the room openly acknowledged. Umbridge's face had turned an interesting shade of purple, but before she could respond, a new voice joined the conversation. Most illuminating demonstration, Mr. Potter. Amelia Bones stood in the doorway, having arrived unannounced with two aurors in formal robes. Madam Bones, Umbridge stammered, I wasn't informed of your interest in this inspection. When reports reached me of a potential forced separation of a documented unbreakable magical bond, I developed an immediate interest, Bones replied coolly. Particularly given the international diplomatic implications and the specific individuals involved. What followed was a bureaucratic power struggle disguised as polite conversation. Amelia Bones, invoking her authority as head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, effectively countermanded Umbridge's recommendations, citing both legal precedents and magical safety concerns. The documented magical backlash from forced separation would constitute a greater safety risk than any currently observed in this stable bond, she concluded firmly. Furthermore, Mr. Potter's status under both British and Romanian magical agreements provides specific protections against intervention without multilateral approval. Umbridge departed fuming but defeated, at least temporarily. After ensuring all documentation reflected the correct assessment outcomes, Amelia Bones spoke privately with Harry. "That was an impressive display, Mr. Potter," she said with genuine approval. "Control and protection rather than raw power. Wise choice." Harry nodded, understanding her deeper meaning. "Madame Umbridge expected me to show off, to be dangerous. That's what she wanted to document." "Indeed," Bones agreed. "Many will expect you to follow the path of power for its own sake. Choosing a different way, power in service of protection, that is the mark of a wizard worth supporting." As the political crisis abated, life at the reserve settled back into its regular rhythms. Harry's 10th birthday approached, marking 5 years since his accidental apparition had changed his life forever. Charlie arranged a small celebration, inviting the Weasley family, the Nystroms, currently researching in Bulgaria and able to visit, and a few trusted reserve staff. Dumbledore made a brief appearance, presenting Harry with a rare book on elemental magic that made Helena's eyes widen with academic envy. As dusk fell, Harry found a quiet moment alone with Blaise, away from the celebration. They watched the sunset from their favorite clifftop perch, the golden light setting Blaise's scales glittering like black diamonds. 5 years together, Blaise communicated, her thought concepts increasingly sophisticated. Small frightened hatchling now growing strong. "We both are," Harry replied, leaning against her warm side. "And they're starting to realize they can't separate us, no matter how much some of them want to. Challenges still come. More humans fear what grows beyond their understanding." Harry nodded, sobered by the truth in her assessment. The confrontation with Umbridge represented just one facet of the resistance they would likely face as his abilities continued developing outside traditional wizarding paths. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't apparated here that day?" he asked. "If I just kept running from Dudley, ended up somewhere else?" Blaise considered this, her massive head tilting thoughtfully. "No point wondering. Fire burns as it must. Wind blows where it will. Magic flows along paths of least resistance. Dragon philosophy?" Harry teased. "Dragon truth," she corrected, a concept impression of amusement flowing through their bond. "We are as we were meant to be." Harry smiled, gazing at the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. Whatever challenges lay ahead, ministry interference, Hogwarts arrangements, the lingering questions about his role in the wider wizarding world, they would face them together, the boy and his dragon, bound by magic and choice and 5 years of shared life. "As we were meant to be," he agreed, feeling the rightness of it down to his core. Chapter 3, The Dragon's Heir, Bank Left. Harry Potter leaned hard into the turn, body moving in perfect sync with Blaise as the massive Hungarian Horntail cut through cloud cover at breathtaking speed. Behind them, 2 Welsh Greens struggled to maintain pursuit, their riders shouting commands that were lost to the howling wind. At 14, Harry had grown tall and lean, his body hardened by years of dragon riding. His wild black hair whipped around his face as they dove toward the training course below, emerald eyes narrowed in concentration behind custom-made goggles. "They're still on us," Harry murmured, though he didn't need to speak aloud. After 9 years bonded, he and Blaise communicated almost entirely through their mental connection. "Too slow," Blaise replied, contempt coloring her thought voice. "Show them real flying." A surge of excitement passed between them. Harry grinned and pressed himself flat against Blaise's neck as she tucked her wings and plummeted. The ground rushed toward them at terrifying speed, the training obstacles growing larger by the second. The pursuing dragons pulled back, their riders unwilling to attempt such a reckless dive. At the last possible moment, Blaze snapped her wings open, pulling into a turn so tight it would have thrown any normal rider. Harry stayed perfectly positioned, their bond allowing him to anticipate every movement before it happened. They shot through the narrow gap between two massive boulders, a maneuver no other dragon rider team would attempt. Time! Harry shouted as they crossed the finish line. Charlie Weasley checked his enchanted stopwatch and shook his head in disbelief. 4 minutes, 12 seconds. You just broke your own record by 26 seconds. The other riders landed nearby, dismounting with the careful movements of those still learning the art of dragon riding. Unlike Harry, they relied on specialized saddles, restraint harnesses, and cushioning charms. Bloody impossible, muttered Drago Ionescu, the reserve's newest dragon handler. At 19, he was the youngest qualified rider besides Harry. That dive should have killed you both. Harry slid from Blaze's back with casual grace, requiring no assistance despite the Hungarian Horntail standing nearly 15 feet at the shoulder. Not if you trust your dragon. Easy for you to say, Elena Petrov, the other rider, replied as she unstrapped herself from her saddle. The rest of us don't have magical bonds that let us read our dragon's mind. Harry shrugged, running a hand along Blaze's scales affectionately. Fair point. In the 9 years since their bonding, Harry and Blaze had become legends at the Romanian Dragon Reserve and beyond. What began as an unprecedented magical accident had evolved into something that challenged fundamental assumptions about human-dragon relations. The scrawny, frightened boy and the juvenile Horntail had grown into a seamless team, the most skilled aerial unit in Europe according to last year's international dragon trials in Norway. Don't let it go to your head, Charlie said, clapping Harry on the shoulder. Remember who taught you to fly. You taught me the basics, Harry corrected with a grin. Blaze taught me everything important. The massive dragon huffed, smoke curling from her nostrils in what everyone at the reserve recognized as draconic amusement. At full maturity, Blaze had grown even larger than typical for her species, nearly 50 feet from snout to tail tip, with a wingspan that cast shadows over entire fields. Her obsidian scales gleamed in the morning sunlight, and the amber eyes that had once studied a 5-year-old Harry with curiosity now surveyed the world with intimidating intelligence. Fair enough, Charlie conceded. Training's done for today. The Norwegian delegation arrives this afternoon. Helena wants you both presentable for the formal reception. Harry groaned. Another political meet and greet? We just did one last month with the Americans. The price of fame, Charlie replied unsympathetically. The boy who lived and his amazing dragon, still the reserve's best advertisement for funding. We're not a circus act, Harry grumbled, though without real heat. He'd long since accepted that his unique situation made him a diplomatic asset. After the riders departed, Harry and Blaze took the long way back to their quarters, soaring high above the Carpathian mountains that surrounded the reserve. These quiet flights, with no training objectives or observers, remained Harry's favorite part of each day. Elara arrives today, Blaze reminded him, her mental voice tinged with knowing amusement. Harry felt heat rise in his cheeks that had nothing to do with his draconic heat resistance. I know. Heart rate increases. Temperature rises. Interesting human response. Oh, shut up, Harry muttered, embarrassed by his dragon's teasing. She's just a friend. 9 years with humans. Still don't understand your mating rituals. We're not, it's not, Harry spluttered before recognizing the mental equivalent of laughter flowing through their bond. Very funny. Blaze's humor faded as they approached the main compound, replaced by focused alertness. Many strangers today. Not just Norwegians. Harry nodded, having noticed the increased activity below. The conference on magical creature bonds starts tomorrow. Researchers from all over. Watch carefully. Not all come to learn. Harry had learned to trust Blaze's instincts about people. Dragons possessed an almost supernatural ability to sense intentions, particularly threatening ones. Through their bond, Harry had developed a similar sensitivity, not true legitimacy, but an awareness of emotional currents and hidden motives. "I always do," he assured her as they descended toward the expanded residence they now called home. Their original cottage had been replaced years ago with a custom-built dwelling that accommodated both human and dragon needs. One half resembled a comfortable wizard home, while the other featured a massive dragon den with direct access to the outdoors. The structure represented the reserve's acceptance that Harry and Blaze were a permanent, integrated unit rather than a temporary arrangement. Charlie met them at the entrance, his expression serious despite his casual tone. "Get cleaned up quickly." Helena called an advance briefing before the delegates arrive. Harry nodded, catching the underlying tension. "Problem? Maybe. Security flagged some concerning intelligence. Better to discuss inside." Once inside, Harry showered and changed into the semi-formal robes he wore for official functions, midnight blue with subtle silver embroidery that Helena had commissioned to project-appropriate dignity without looking stuffy. At 14, Harry still preferred his riding leathers and dragonhide boots, but years of political interactions had taught him the value of presentation. When he entered the secure meeting room, several familiar faces greeted him. Helena Valerian, now in her 10th year as reserve director, nodded from the head of the table. Beside her sat Kingsley Shacklebolt, whose regular security consultations had evolved into friendship over the years. To everyone's surprise, Albus Dumbledore was also present, his purple robe standing out among the practical attire of the reserve staff. "Headmaster," Harry greeted him with raised eyebrows. "Didn't expect to see you before the conference." "Circumstances warranted an early arrival," Dumbledore replied, his customary twinkle subdued. "Please, join us." Harry took his seat as Charlie secured the room with privacy charms. Through the large viewing window, he could see Blaze settling into her observation position, close enough to maintain their comfortable bond distance, positioned to watch for approaching threats. "We've received credible intelligence concerning potential threats to the reserve during the conference," Helena began without preamble. "Specifically, threats targeting you and Blaze." Harry nodded, unsurprised. Over the years, various groups had expressed interest in his unique abilities, some scholarly, others more sinister. "What kind of threats?" "Death Eater activity," Kingsley said bluntly. "We've tracked increased communication between former supporters of you-know-who over the past 6 months. Coded messages mentioning the Dragon Child and living weapon." Harry absorbed this soberly. Though Voldemort had disappeared the night Harry's parents died, his followers hadn't vanished entirely. Most had claimed to be under the Imperius curse or otherwise denied involvement, but intelligence agencies maintained watch lists of suspected sympathizers. "They're interested in my abilities," Harry concluded. "The fire manipulation, the dragon communication. More likely they're interested in weaponizing your bond with Blaze," Helena corrected. "A wizard who commands a Hungarian Horntail represents significant military potential." "I don't command Blaze," Harry objected automatically. "We're partners." "A distinction lost on those who view power only as dominance," Dumbledore observed quietly. "Nevertheless, Director Valerian is correct about their probable intentions." Charlie leaned forward. "The timing isn't coincidental. This conference brings together experts on magical bonds from around the world. Perfect cover for infiltration. We've enhanced security protocols," Kingsley assured them. "Every attendee undergoes identity verification and magical signature screening. But we can't screen for everyone's true intentions," Harry finished, understanding the limitation. "Especially if they're using intermediaries or Imperius victims." The group discussed specific security measures for the coming days, restricted areas, emergency protocols, communication systems. Harry contributed based on his experience with reserve security, having participated in protective operations since the poacher incident 6 years earlier. As the meeting concluded, Dumbledore asked Harry to remain behind. Once the others departed, the headmaster regarded Harry with thoughtful eyes. "You've grown impressively, Harry. Not just physically, but in your understanding of complex situations. Harry shrugged. Living between the dragon world and human politics gives you perspective. Indeed. Dumbledore stroked his silver beard. Which brings me to a matter we must discuss. You turn 15 next month, ordinarily the age when most wizards have already completed several years at Hogwarts. Harry tensed slightly. The question of his formal magical education remained unresolved despite years of negotiation. His quarterly visits to Hogwarts had evolved into more intensive monthly training sessions with various professors, but full attendance had proved impossible due to his bond with Blaise. Has the Board of Governors finally made a decision? Harry asked. After considerable deliberation, yes. Dumbledore's expression revealed nothing. They've authorized a conditional arrangement for your attendance beginning this September. Harry's heart jumped. Despite his unique life at the reserve, he'd always wondered about experiencing Hogwarts as a student rather than a visitor. What conditions? Blaise would be permitted to reside in a secured section of the Forbidden Forest. You would attend classes but return to her location each evening rather than sleeping in a house dormitory. Dumbledore adjusted his half-moon spectacles. Additional security measures would be implemented, both for the other students' safety and your own. It sounds workable, Harry said cautiously. Perhaps, Dumbledore conceded. However, I must be candid about the political realities. While at Hogwarts, you would face significant restrictions on your bond activities. No flying over school grounds, limited fire manipulation, constant monitoring. Harry frowned. They still don't trust us. Many fear what they do not understand. Your abilities have developed far beyond traditional magical education paradigms. Dumbledore leaned forward. I arranged this compromise after years of advocacy, but you should enter with clear expectations. Hogwarts would offer structure, peer relationships, and breadth of magical knowledge. It would not, however, specifically advance your unique capabilities. Harry appreciated Dumbledore's honesty. I need to think about it. Discuss it with Blaise. Of course. Dumbledore rose. No decision is needed immediately. Observe how the conference proceeds. It may provide perspective on both the academic community's interest in your abilities and the threats that interest attracts. After Dumbledore departed, Harry joined Blaise outside, automatically strengthening their mental connection to share the conversation. School Cage, came her immediate assessment. Restrictions. Watchers. Suspicion. But also learning, Harry countered, settling against her warm flank. Other young wizards. A different life than just the reserve. You already learn. Charlie teaches. Helena teaches. Dumbledore sends teachers. Her mental tone carried definite skepticism. What can School Cage teach that freedom cannot? It was a fair question. Harry's education had been unconventional but thorough, standard magical subjects from tutors, dragon lore from handlers, practical defense from Kingsley during his visits, even some advanced magic from Dumbledore himself. Beyond formal instruction, his bond with Blaise had developed magical abilities that defied conventional classification. Maybe it's not about what they can teach me, Harry mused. Maybe it's about belonging to both worlds, dragon and human. Blaise rumbled thoughtfully. You already bridge worlds. Need no school to prove it. Their philosophical discussion was interrupted by the distant sound of arrival bells. The Norwegian delegation had reached the reserve's international portkey point. Go meet your humans. We decide later. Harry grinned at her dismissive tone. Despite years of interaction with wizards, Blaise maintained a distinctly draconic perspective on human affairs, generally viewing them as unnecessarily complicated and often pointless. The formal reception proceeded with typical diplomatic choreography, official greetings, introductions, carefully worded speeches about international cooperation. Harry played his role as the reserve's most famous resident, answering the usual questions about his bond with Blaise and demonstrating basic fire manipulation to appropriate gasps of amazement. As the event transitioned to a more casual reception, Harry scanned the crowd for familiar faces among the early conference arrivals. His heart skipped when he spotted Alara Nystrom conversing with Charlie near the refreshment table. At 14, Alara had grown into her academic heritage, confident, articulate, with an intensity that matched her father's scholarly passion. Her dark curly hair was now streaked with blue, and her traditional researcher's robes had been modified with practical elements that reflected her fieldwork experience. After 5 years of correspondence and occasional visits, Harry considered her his closest human friend. "Harry," she called, spotting him across the room. "Get over here and settle an argument." Harry navigated through the crowd, accepting greetings from various researchers who had studied his bond over the years. "What argument needs settling?" he asked, reaching their position. "Charlie claims Hungarian Horntails have better directional hearing than Hebridean blacks," Alara explained, eyes bright with academic fervor. "But my research in Scotland last summer suggests otherwise." "Don't drag me into your academic disputes," Harry laughed. "I'm just the guy who rides dragons, not the expert who studies them." "False modesty doesn't suit you," Alara replied, punching his arm lightly. "Your observational data on dragon sensory processing is cited in 3 different journals. Only because your father made me document everything." Harry turned to Charlie. "How long has she been arguing with you?" 20 minutes, Charlie confirmed with a grin. "And making surprisingly good points for someone who hasn't spent a decade working directly with horntails." Their friendly debate continued until Helena signaled for Harry to join a conversation with the Norwegian Minister for Magical Creature Research. The evening proceeded as such events typically did, a mixture of genuine academic discussion and political posturing, with Harry showcasing his unique position in both worlds. Later, as the reception wound down, Harry finally managed to steal a few minutes alone with Alara on one of the observation decks overlooking the reserve. Below them, dragons moved through the twilight, their occasional fire bursts illuminating the darkening valley. "Dad's presentation tomorrow will feature some of our findings from Peru," Alara said, leaning against the railing. "Quetzalcoatl bond patterns show fascinating parallels to what you and Blaze have developed." "Parallel but not identical," Harry noted, having reviewed Henrik's preliminary research. "The Incan wizard bonds were temporary, ritual-based." Alara nodded approvingly. "You did read our paper." "I thought you were just being polite when you said you would." "I always read your research," Harry admitted. "It helps me understand what's happening with Blaze and me." A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched the reserve's nighttime activities unfold. Security patrols circled on brooms, their wand lights marking their positions. Nocturnal dragons emerged from caves, stretching wings for evening flights. "You seem different," Alara observed suddenly. "More serious than last time I visited." Harry shrugged. "Growing up, I guess." "It's more than that." Her perceptive eyes studied him. "Something's weighing on you." Harry hesitated, then decided honesty was simpler than evasion. "Dumbledore offered me a place at Hogwarts for September. Conditional arrangements for Blaze and everything." "That's fantastic!" Alara exclaimed before registering his expression. "Isn't it?" "I don't know," Harry admitted. "It's complicated." "Explain complicated," she prompted, turning to face him fully. Harry organized his thoughts, appreciating how Alara never settled for vague answers. "Hogwarts represents the traditional wizarding path, the one I might have taken if I hadn't bonded with Blaze. Part of me wants to experience that, to understand that world better." "But?" Alara prompted. "But it would come with significant restrictions. They'd monitor and limit our bond activities, treat Blaze more as a dangerous creature to be managed than as my partner." Harry ran a hand through his perpetually messy hair. "And honestly, I'm not sure how much their curriculum would actually help my specific magical development." Alara considered this thoughtfully. "You're wondering if you'd be sacrificing your unique path just to fit a standard mold." "Exactly." Harry felt relief at her quick understanding. "Plus, there's the whole boy who lived thing. At the reserve, people got used to me years ago. At Hogwarts, I'd be a celebrity all over again. With the added complication of being bonded to a Hungarian Horntail, Elara added. Not exactly the inconspicuous arrival. Harry laughed despite his concerns. Not exactly. What does Blaise think? Elara asked, always addressing the dragon's perspective as equally valid. She thinks it's a school cage that would restrict us unnecessarily, Harry replied with a smile. Dragons aren't big on institutional education. Pragmatic creatures, Elara nodded. Learn what's needed, ignore the rest. Before Harry could respond, a mental alert from Blaise grabbed his attention, a sharp pulse of warning that had him automatically scanning their surroundings. Danger. South perimeter. Fire and screams. Harry straightened, all casual demeanor vanishing. Something's happening at the south boundary. Blaise senses trouble. As if confirming his words, alarm bells began ringing across the reserve. Red warning lights flashed from security towers. Wait here, Harry instructed, already moving toward the stairs. Elara matched his pace. Not a chance. I'm coming with you. It could be dangerous, Harry began. I've studied combat applications of magical bonds for 2 years, she interrupted. I'm not some helpless academic. Harry knew arguing would waste precious time. Fine. Stay close. They raced toward the south quadrant, joining the stream of reserve staff responding to the alarm. Through his bond with Blaise, Harry felt her take flight, providing aerial reconnaissance. Intruders. 6, no, 8 wizards. Dark robes, masks. Attacking the containment pens. Death Eaters, Harry muttered, relaying the information to Elara. They're targeting the dragon enclosures. As they approached the south quadrant, chaos became visible. 2 enclosures stood open, their occupants, a Norwegian ridgeback and a Swedish shortsnout, circling in agitated confusion. Reserve handlers attempted to maintain control while defending against spellfire from black-robed attackers wearing silver masks. Charlie appeared beside them, wand drawn. This is a coordinated attack. They've breached 3 different sections simultaneously. He pointed to the ridge above. I need you on aerial defense with Blaise. They've got broom-mounted attackers trying to stun the loose dragons. Harry nodded, instantly shifting to combat mentality. Elara, stay with Charlie. But, I need someone who understands the bond to explain what we're doing, Harry cut her off. Tactical communication. Understanding flickered in her eyes, he was giving her an important role while keeping her away from the direct fighting. Fine. Go. Harry sprinted to an open area, mentally calling Blaise, who was already diving toward his position. He leapt upward as she swept low, catching her neck ridge in a practiced motion that had become second nature over years of partnership. Airborne, the situation clarified. The Death Eaters had created a deliberate diversion by releasing certain dragons while their actual target appeared to be the research building where the bond studies were kept. 3 masked figures were engaged in a magical battle with reserve security outside the facility. They want the research. Your research. Blaise's assessment matched Harry's conclusion. Let's discourage them, Harry replied grimly. What followed demonstrated why Harry and Blaise had become legendary among dragon handlers. They moved as a single unit, attacking with coordinated precision that made conventional dragon riding look clumsy by comparison. Harry didn't need to voice commands or use physical controls, Blaise responded to his intentions instantly through their bond. 3 Death Eaters on brooms discovered this disadvantage when they attempted to engage. Blaise's fire breath, controlled and directed through Harry's magic, created barriers that trapped the attackers in aerial corridors rather than simply blasting indiscriminately. When one Death Eater attempted to curse Harry directly, he deflected the spell with a heat shield, a technique he developed that used concentrated thermal energy to disrupt magical attacks. Below, reserve handlers were gradually containing the situation, recapturing the released dragons and pushing back the ground-based attackers. Harry and Blaze maintained air superiority, preventing aerial escape and providing tactical support where needed. Behind. Blaze's warning came with a surge of protective instinct. Harry felt the incoming curse more than saw it, a sickly purple light aimed at Blaze's wing joint. Without conscious thought, he channeled their combined magical energy into a deflection field that scattered the spell into harmless sparks. They spun to face their attacker, a wizard hovering on a broom, his silver mask more elaborate than the others. Unlike his companions, he flew with confident stillness, wand extended casually. "Impressive, Potter," the man called, his voice magically amplified. "The reports didn't exaggerate your connection." Harry maintained their defensive posture, feeling Blaze's muscles tense beneath him. "Who are you? What do you want?" "A demonstration, primarily," the wizard replied conversationally. "And confirmation of certain theories about your capabilities." With shocking speed, the wizard cast 3 spells in rapid succession, not at Harry, but at Blaze's wings and eyes. Harry deflected them instinctively, but the pattern forced Blaze to bank awkwardly, momentarily disrupting their balance. "Fascinating," the wizard observed. "Your protective instincts prioritize the dragon over yourself. The bond flows both ways." Harry realized the attack had been a test rather than a serious attempt to harm them. This made the wizard more dangerous, not less. He was studying their responses, learning their patterns. "If you wanted to study magical bonds, you could have registered for the conference like everyone else," Harry called, stalling while he mentally coordinated with Blaze for a countermove. The wizard laughed coldly. "Academic posturing has limited value. True understanding requires practical observation." Without warning, the Death Eater cast a spell Harry had never encountered, a sickly yellow beam that split into multiple tendrils midair. When Harry raised his usual heat shield, the tendrils flowed around it like living things, still seeking targets. "Magic Seeker." Blaze recognized the spell's intent before Harry did. Acting on her warning, Harry dropped his defensive magic entirely, the opposite of his instinctual response. The spell, designed to track and latch onto active magical defenses, found nothing to grip and dissipated harmlessly. "Very good," the Death Eater acknowledged. "The dragon's magical knowledge flows to you as well. Older magic. Instinctual." He raised his wand again. "Let's try something more challenging." Before he could cast, a powerful spell struck from below. Dumbledore had joined the battle, his magic unmistakable in its controlled power. The Death Eater was forced to dodge, breaking his focus on Harry and Blaze. "Another time, Dragon Child," the wizard called, suddenly activating a portkey. "We've learned what we came for today." He vanished, along with the remaining attackers who hadn't been captured or incapacitated. The sudden retreat left an eerie quiet broken only by the calls of agitated dragons and the shouts of handlers restoring order. Harry guided Blaze in a final sweep of the perimeter before landing near the command post Helena had established. Dumbledore, Kingsley, Charlie, and Alara were already gathered, assessing the attack's aftermath. 7 captured, at least 4 escaped, Kingsley reported as Harry joined them. "Minimal casualties among our staff, no serious injuries." "They were testing us," Harry said without preamble. The leader, the one in the decorated mask, was analyzing our defensive capabilities, not trying to cause maximum damage. Dumbledore nodded gravely. "A reconnaissance mission disguised as an attack. Concerning, but not unexpected given the intelligence we received." "Did they acquire any research materials?" Alara asked anxiously. "Nothing significant," Helena assured her. "Our most sensitive information on magical bonds is protected by security measures beyond simple breaking and entering." "They weren't after documents anyway," Harry said, the realization forming as he spoke. "They wanted to see the bond in action, how Blaze and I function under threat." "To learn weaknesses," Blaze added, her thought reaching Harry clearly despite her position outside the building. "Hunting behavior. Study prey before killing strike." Harry relayed this assessment, causing Kingsley to frown deeply. If these are indeed Death Eaters rather than simply poachers or dark wizards, their interest in your abilities has concerning implications. You know who remains gone, Charlie pointed out. His followers have never shown this level of coordination since his fall. Perhaps, Dumbledore said thoughtfully. But absence is not the same as non-existence. The ominous statement hung in the air as they continued discussing security implications and response strategies. The conference would proceed with enhanced protections, but smaller workshops rather than large presentations to maintain better control. Hours later, after security debriefs and healing checks, Harry finally returned to his quarters with Alara accompanying him. Charlie had arranged protective accommodation for her rather than returning her to the visitor housing. "You were incredible up there," she said as they sat in Harry's living area, mugs of hot chocolate in hand. "The way you and Blaise moved together, it was like watching theoretical bond dynamics made perfectly real." Harry smiled tiredly. 9 years of practice. "It's more than practice," Alara insisted. "What you've developed goes beyond the established literature on magical bonds. The fire manipulation, the shared magical defenses, the communication speed, it's revolutionary." Through the large connecting archway, Blaise listened to their conversation from her side of the dwelling, occasionally adding commentary that only Harry could hear. "She sees truth. Our bond evolves beyond known patterns." "Your father's been saying that for years," Harry reminded Alara. "Dad theorizes. I just watched you implement those theories to fight dark wizards." She leaned forward intently. "Harry, you need to understand how unprecedented your abilities are becoming. That's why they're interested in you, not just because you're the boy who lived, but because you're developing magic that breaks conventional rules." Harry absorbed this silently. While he recognized his capabilities were unusual, living with them daily normalized what others saw as extraordinary. Through Blaise, he sensed dangers and opportunities instinctively. Through their bond, he channeled forms of magic that felt natural despite their rarity. "The Death Eater called me Dragon Child," Harry said suddenly. "Not Potter or Boy Who Lived. Like he saw me as something different." Alara's eyes widened. "That terminology, it appears in some of the oldest texts about dragon mages. Not modern research, but historical accounts from the Founder's era. Dumbledore's mentioned dragon mages before, but never with much detail," Harry said. "Said most information was lost or considered legendary rather than historical." "Not lost. Hidden." Blaise's interjection carried surprising certainty. "Dragons remember. Stories passed through generations." Harry relayed this to Alara, whose academic excitement momentarily overshadowed the evening's danger. "Oral tradition among dragons. That would explain gaps in the written record. If dragons maintained knowledge that wizards couldn't access." "Focus, Alara," Harry interrupted with fond exasperation. "Death Eater attack, remember? Potential dark wizard interest in using us as weapons." "Right, sorry." She composed herself. "But don't you see? If you're manifesting abilities similar to historical dragon mages, understanding that tradition could help you develop more effectively, and understand what others might want from your power." Harry couldn't argue with her logic. "So where do we find information about magic that's supposedly been lost for centuries?" "I might have an idea," Alara said slowly. "But you're not going to like it." Alara was right, Harry didn't like her idea. Which was how, 3 days later, he found himself in Hogwarts Library's restricted section with special permission from Dumbledore, who had found her theory intriguing enough to facilitate immediate research. "This is pointless," Harry muttered, closing another ancient tome that contained only passing reference to dragon-bonded wizards. If Hogwarts had useful information on dragon mages, Dumbledore would have found it years ago. Dumbledore wasn't looking with the right perspective, Alara replied absently, deep in a crumbling manuscript. Academic historians search for explicit references to dragon mages as a documented tradition. We're looking for pattern evidence across disparate sources. Harry sighed, reaching for another book. After the attack, the conference had continued with restricted attendance and heightened security. Henrik Nystrom had enthusiastically supported his daughter's research expedition to Hogwarts, contributing his own notes and theories before returning to the conference presentations. "Here's something," Elara said suddenly. "In the time of Merlin's youth, certain wizards of the Western Mountains communed with the great Wyrms, sharing fire and thought, their magics intertwined beyond separation." She looked up excitedly. "That's Wales, where Dumbledore said the last known dragon mages originated." Harry moved to read over her shoulder. "Does it explain how the bond worked?" "Not specifically, but listen to this part. These dragon-touched carried the fire within, their magic transformed through communion with elder beings whose understanding of primal forces exceeded mortal comprehension." Carrying the fire within, Harry repeated thoughtfully, conjuring a small flame that danced across his palm without burning him. "That's a pretty accurate description." They continued researching, gradually assembling fragments of information from various historical sources. The picture that emerged was fascinating but incomplete: ancient wizards who developed profound bonds with dragons, gaining abilities beyond normal magical practice while serving as intermediaries between human and dragon communities. "They weren't just dragon riders," Elara summarized as they organized their findings. "They were diplomats, magical innovators, and protectors who could communicate across species boundaries." "But something happened to them," Harry noted, pointing to several references in later texts. "They disappeared from historical records around the early medieval period." Coinciding with increasing dragon hunting and the start of major restrictions on magical creatures, Elara observed. "The timing suggests conflict between traditional wizarding authorities and these dragon mages." Their research was interrupted by Dumbledore's arrival in the restricted section. The headmaster examined their organized notes with evident interest. "You've assembled more coherent information on dragon mages than any scholar in the past century," he commented. "Most impressive." "It's still mostly fragments and indirect references," Harry said. "Nothing that explains how the bonds were formed or exactly how their magic worked." "Perhaps because such knowledge was deliberately obscured," Dumbledore suggested. "History is written by the victorious, and the absence of clear records often indicates intentional suppression rather than simple loss." Harry and Elara exchanged glances. "You think the dragon mages were eliminated deliberately?" Harry asked. "I think," Dumbledore said carefully, "that magical traditions which challenge established power structures have historically faced opposition. Dragon mages represented a form of magic outside traditional human-centric hierarchies. They answered to dragons as much as to wizarding authorities." The implications settled heavily on Harry. If dragon mages had been suppressed for operating outside established magical control, what did that mean for his own developing abilities? "Is that why the Ministry's always been nervous about my bond with Blaise? Not just safety concerns, but the fact that it represents magic they can't fully regulate." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled with approval at Harry's insight. "Precisely. Your bond challenges fundamental assumptions about how magic should be learned, controlled, and implemented. For many traditionalists, that represents an inherent threat to established order. And for others, it represents power they want to control," Elara added, thinking of the Death Eater attack. "Indeed." Dumbledore gestured to their research. "I believe we should continue this investigation with additional resources. The Hogwarts archives contain certain materials not catalogued in the main library." With Dumbledore's guidance, they accessed ancient records kept separate from the regular collection, Founders-era documents, personal journals, and regulatory decrees from the early Wisengamot. Among these materials, they discovered something remarkable: a partial account of the conflict between the last recognized dragon mages and the newly formed Ministry of Magic. "The Dragon Council refuses regulation of their bonded wizards," Harry read from a faded transcript. "They claim ancient right of separation from wand authority, declaring their adherence beyond the jurisdiction of common magical law. Such separatist claims cannot be tolerated," Elara continued, reading the Ministry's response. "All magical persons within our territories must acknowledge central authority or be declared in violation of the unification statutes. Dumbledore nodded gravely. The early ministry sought to bring all magical practitioners under centralized control, a response to chaotic conditions that had resulted in dangerous exposure risks to muggles. But for dragon mages, whose primary allegiance included non-human entities, they couldn't accept ministry authority without betraying their dragon bonds, Harry concluded, feeling the historical parallel to his own situation with uncomfortable clarity. Further documents revealed the eventual outcome, not violent suppression as they had feared, but gradual extinction through regulatory pressure. Dragon territories were restricted, bonding practices were classified as dangerous magic requiring licenses never actually granted, and the tradition slowly died out as older practitioners passed away without training successors. The last documented dragon mage was Rhys Owain in 1312, Dumbledore noted, indicating a ministry census record. After that, the classification vanishes from official recognition, reclassified under general, dragon handler, designations. Harry sat back, processing the historical weight of what they'd discovered. So I might be accidentally reviving a magical tradition that was deliberately regulated out of existence centuries ago. A tradition, Dumbledore added with subtle emphasis, that represented a different model of magical cooperation, one that recognized dragons as equal partners rather than creatures to be controlled. Truth, came Blaze's distant thought, reaching Harry despite being positioned at the edge of the Forbidden Forest during his Hogwarts visit. Dragons remember the fire-sharing humans. Lost to time, not to memory. Blaze says dragons still remember this tradition, Harry relayed. It's part of their oral history. Elara's eyes lit with scholarly excitement. That explains why she's been able to guide your development so effectively. She's drawing on dragon knowledge passed down through generations. Knowledge that might help us understand what those Death Eaters want from me, Harry added, refocusing on the immediate concern. Dumbledore stroked his beard thoughtfully. I suspect they seek not just your abilities, but the potential to replicate them. If your bond represents a re-emergence of dragon mage capabilities, those with dark intentions would see tremendous strategic value in controlling such power. Their research continued for 2 more days, yielding additional fragments that helped construct a clearer picture of dragon mage practices and abilities. Harry found himself increasingly certain that his development with Blaze followed this ancient pattern, though their accidental bonding had created a somewhat different progression than the historical accounts described. When they returned to Romania, the conference was concluding. The Death Eater attack had been minimized in public reporting, described as a security incident to prevent panic, but attendees knew enough to be concerned. Henrik Nystrom immediately incorporated their Hogwarts findings into his presentation on historical bond precedents, creating significant academic excitement despite the deliberately vague references to Harry's specific case. You've become the center of a theoretical revolution in bond studies, Elara told Harry as they watched researchers excitedly discussing her father's presentation. And most of them don't even realize the full implications. Harry shrugged uncomfortably. While the academic interest was better than fear or suspicion, being studied as a living example of forgotten magic still felt intrusive. In the days following the conference, Harry focused on practical applications of their historical discoveries, working with Charlie and Kingsley to enhance his combat capabilities. If Death Eaters were specifically targeting his dragon bond, he needed to be prepared to defend himself and Blaze. The historical accounts mention dragon mages wielding fire in highly controlled forms, Harry explained during one training session. Not just flames, but what they called essence of dragon fire, heat energy manipulated with precision. Kingsley watched as Harry demonstrated, compressing fire into an almost solid-seeming sphere that radiated intense heat without visible flame. Impressive, the Auror acknowledged. But how does this translate to practical defense? In answer, Harry directed the compressed energy toward a training dummy, releasing it in a focused beam that melted through protective shields before incinerating the target completely. Dragon fire has properties that bypass certain magical defenses, Harry explained. It's not just heat, it carries magical energy that interacts differently with protective spells. These advanced applications of his bond-derived abilities developed rapidly as Harry consciously applied the historical framework they discovered. With Blaze's guidance, now informed by their understanding of dragon oral tradition, he refined techniques that hadn't been seen in wizarding Britain for centuries. Throughout this intensive training period, Harry remained acutely aware of Dumbledore's Hogwarts offer approaching its decision deadline. The research into dragon mages had clarified his dilemma rather than resolving it. Attending Hogwarts meant participating in the very institutional structure that had once deliberately suppressed the magical tradition he now embodied. 6 weeks after the conference, Harry sat with Charlie on their favorite observation ridge, watching sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. Blaise hunted in the valley below, her massive form moving with deadly grace despite her size. "Term starts in 3 weeks, Charlie noted casually. "Dumbledore will need your decision soon." Harry nodded, tossing a stone over the cliff edge. "I know." "And?" Charlie prompted gently. "I'm still torn," Harry admitted. "Hogwarts represents the world my parents knew, the traditional path. Part of me wants that connection." Charlie waited patiently for the rest. "But everything we've learned about dragon mages makes me question whether traditional education makes sense for what I'm becoming," Harry continued. "They operated outside conventional magical structures for a reason, their abilities developed differently, required different approaches. You're afraid Hogwarts would constrain your development rather than enhance it," Charlie summarized. "Exactly." Harry conjured a small flame, shaping it absently as he spoke, a habit he'd developed over years. The restrictions they'd impose aren't just annoying limitations, they could actively impede the bond's natural progression. Charlie considered this thoughtfully. "You know, when you first arrived here, this terrified 5-year-old accidentally bonded to a dragon. I thought my job was to help you become as normal a wizard as possible despite extraordinary circumstances." Harry smiled faintly. "I remember your early lessons. Dragons are dangerous, Harry. Always maintain proper safety protocols, Harry. And now look at us," Charlie laughed. "You're developing magic I never even imagined possible, and I'm helping you train combat applications that would give my old professors heart attacks." "You've been a good guardian," Harry said sincerely. "You adapted to what I needed instead of forcing me into what Wizarding Society expected." Charlie nodded, unexpectedly serious. "That's actually my point, Harry. Maybe the choice isn't between rejecting traditional education or compromising your unique path. Maybe it's about defining a third option, one that acknowledges both worlds without being limited by either." Before Harry could respond, Blaise's urgent mental call interrupted their conversation. Intruders. Multiple locations. Armed. Organized. Harry was on his feet instantly, extending his magical senses through their bond to perceive what Blaise had detected, magical signatures approaching the reserve boundaries from multiple directions, moving with tactical precision. "Attack incoming," he told Charlie tersely. "Larger than last time. Professional coordination." Charlie activated his emergency signal, alerting reserve security. "How many?" "At least 20 that Blaise can sense," Harry replied, already moving toward the edge of the ridge where Blaise could retrieve him. "Same magical signatures as before, plus others." "Death Eaters again," Charlie concluded grimly, sending a Patronus message with specific details. "This isn't another reconnaissance mission." Harry nodded in agreement. "This is an extraction attempt. They're coming for me and Blaise." Within minutes, the reserve's emergency protocols activated. Warning bells rang, security teams deployed to defensive positions, and non-essential personnel evacuated to protected shelters. Harry, against Charlie's objections, assumed his position as aerial defense with Blaise. "We're their primary target," he argued as they prepared to take flight. "Better to engage from a position of strength than wait for them to reach us." Unable to dispute this logic, Charlie coordinated ground defense while Harry and Blaise launched into the darkening sky. The reserve's magical illumination activated, bathing the compound in bluish light that revealed the approaching threat, black-robed figures moving in coordinated formation, supported by others on brooms. At least 30, Harry reported through the communication charm Kingsley had established. Anti-apparition and anti-portkey wards already in place around our perimeter. They've prepared thoroughly, Kingsley's voice replied. Ministry reinforcements are responding but will need time to breach the interference they've established. Harry positioned Blaze at optimal height for both observation and interception. Unlike the previous attack, which had targeted research materials, this assault aimed directly for the reserve's central compound, specifically, Harry's living quarters and the adjacent dragon territory Blaze claimed. The Death Eaters attacked with coordinated precision, using specialized spells clearly chosen for effectiveness against dragon defenses. Stunning spells modified for dragon hide penetration, containment hexes designed to restrict flight, and magical nets that expanded mid-air all indicated detailed planning. What they hadn't adequately prepared for was Harry and Blaze's evolved combat capabilities. In the weeks since the previous attack, Harry had intensively developed the dragon mage techniques discovered in their research. Rather than simply breathing fire or projecting heat, Blaze channeled her draconic energy through their bond, allowing Harry to reshape it into forms no conventional wizard would anticipate. When 3 Death Eaters on brooms attempted to ensnare Blaze with magical binding nets, Harry created a thermal shockwave that disrupted the spell's coherence, causing the nets to dissolve before reaching them. When another group tried to establish a containment dome over part of the compound, Harry and Blaze combined their magic to create counterpressure that shattered the forming barrier. "They're adapting," Harry warned as he observed the Death Eaters' shifting tactics. Switching to direct assault rather than capture methods. The battle intensified as the attackers realized their specialized equipment wasn't achieving its purpose. Lethal curses replaced capture spells, and Harry found himself defending against increasingly dangerous magic. Through their bond, Blaze's combat instincts merged with Harry's tactical awareness. They executed maneuvers impossible for conventional wizard-dragon pairs, vertical dives that transitioned directly into precision fire attacks, magical feints that drew enemy fire before instantaneous position shifts, and defensive counters that utilized their shared magical resistance. Below, reserve defenders fought to hold their positions. Charlie led one group in protecting the dragon nursery, while Helena coordinated with Romanian magical defense forces attempting to break through the interference blocking outside support. Leader approaching, Blaze warned, detecting a magical signature stronger than the others. Harry spotted him immediately, the same wizard in the decorated mask who had tested their defenses during the previous attack. Unlike before, he now approached directly, flanked by 4 supporters in standard Death Eater masks. The Dragon Child demonstrates his heritage, the leader called, voice magically amplified. Impressive, if predictable. Harry maintained defensive positioning, wary of engagement without understanding the wizard's capabilities. "What do you want?" To offer clarity, came the smooth reply. "You've rediscovered your lineage, the dragon mage tradition your researchers so eagerly excavated from historical obscurity." Harry tensed, realizing the Death Eaters had infiltrated or monitored their research. "This magic you're developing doesn't belong in the restricted box the Ministry would place you in," the wizard continued. "It represents power beyond their limited understanding or control. And you think you understand it better?" Harry challenged. "I understand that true power deserves freedom to evolve without constraint." The wizard's voice carried sincere conviction beneath its cultured tones. "My master appreciated such rare magical developments, nurtured them rather than feared them." "Voldemort," Harry stated flatly, ignoring the flinches from Death Eaters at the name. "The Dark Lord recognized magical potential beyond arbitrary categorization," the wizard confirmed. "He would have valued your abilities, cultivated them to their full expression rather than restricting them as Dumbledore and the Ministry intend." Harry felt Blaze's mental growl, her absolute rejection of this overture flowing through their bond. Funny way of showing appreciation, attacking a dragon reserve, endangering innocent creatures and people. Necessary demonstration, the wizard dismissed. "You've been isolated here, fed half-truths about your potential and your history. The dragon mages weren't simply extinguished through regulation as your sanitized research suggests, they were systematically eliminated because they represented magic beyond Ministry control. The claim struck uncomfortably close to conclusions Harry had already considered. The historical fragments they'd discovered had indeed suggested more active suppression than Dumbledore had emphasized. Your point? Harry demanded, refusing to show uncertainty. Join us, the wizard stated simply. We can protect you from those who would limit your development, provide resources to fully explore these reawakened abilities. The knowledge you've glimpsed is merely the surface of what once existed, knowledge we've preserved while others sought to destroy it. The offer hung in the air, momentarily freezing the battle around them. Harry felt multiple emotions collide, suspicion of obvious manipulation, yet curiosity about knowledge they might indeed possess, rejection of their methods, yet frustration with ministry limitations he'd experienced firsthand. Blaze's response came with crystal clarity, lies wrapped in truth. Power promised with chains hidden. Harry nodded imperceptibly, grounding himself in their bond. Here's my answer. Without warning, Harry unleashed a technique they'd perfected only days before, channeling dragon fire not as heat or flame but as pure magical energy. Golden light erupted from his hands, connecting with Blaze's simultaneously released breath to create a spiraling vortex that surrounded the Death Eater leader and his escorts. The magical construct wasn't directly harmful, but it stripped away concealment spells, including the masks that had hidden their identities. The leader's face became visible, aristocratic features, pale blonde hair, and cold gray eyes widened in shock at the magical nullification he hadn't believed possible. Lucius Malfoy, Harry identified him, recognizing the prominent ministry figure from newspaper photographs. Interesting company you keep outside official functions. Malfoy's exposed expression shifted from surprise to calculating reassessment. Impressive control. You've progressed further than our intelligence suggested. You should update your sources, Harry replied coldly. Now take your followers and leave before reinforcements arrive. You reject knowledge that is rightfully yours. Malfoy pressed, still attempting persuasion despite his compromised position. Power that could free you from those who would cage your potential. Harry's response came with absolute certainty. I reject anyone who attacks those under my protection to make a point. Dragon mages weren't just powerful wizards, they were guardians of both human and dragon communities. That's the tradition I choose to honor. Malfoy's face hardened. Naive sentiment. Power requires difficult choices, Potter. One day you'll understand that. A signal passed among the Death Eaters, some prearranged contingency plan activating. Simultaneously, multiple explosions rocked the reserve's outer defenses, creating chaos that covered their withdrawal. This isn't finished, Malfoy called as emergency port keys activated despite the anti-transportation wards, suggesting sophisticated countermeasures prepared in advance. When you tire of Dumbledore's restraints, remember there are alternatives. As the Death Eaters retreated, Harry and Blaze maintained aerial coverage, ensuring no deceptive maneuvers masked continuing threats. Only when Kingsley's reinforcements finally broke through the interference did Harry allow himself to land near the command center where Charlie coordinated response efforts. Minimal casualties, Charlie reported with evident relief. 2 handlers with serious injuries but stable, no fatalities. 3 dragons with minor wounds from specialized stunning spells. They weren't trying to maximize damage, Harry noted. This was about making contact with me, delivering their recruitment pitch. Elara, who had taken shelter in the secure records vault, joined them as Harry explained the confrontation with Lucius Malfoy and his offer of preserved knowledge about dragon mages. Could they actually have historical information we couldn't access, she wondered, the researcher in her momentarily overriding security concerns. Possibly, Harry acknowledged. But twisted to serve their purposes. Whatever they know about dragon mages, they see the tradition as a source of power, not partnership. The cleanup and security reinforcement continued through the night. Kingsley coordinated with international magical law enforcement, though prospects for capturing the retreating Death Eaters seemed slim given their sophisticated escape methods. Dumbledore arrived shortly before dawn, having been alerted to the attack. After reviewing reports and examining damaged areas, he joined Harry, Charlie, Helena, and Elara for a private assessment. Lucius Malfoy's direct involvement elevates this beyond isolated extremism, Dumbledore observed gravely. A wizard of his position and influence participating in a military-style assault represents significant coordination among Voldemort's former supporters. But why now? Charlie questioned. It's been 13 years since you-know-who's fall. Why suddenly organize to recruit Harry? Perhaps because Harry is approaching full magical maturity, Dumbledore suggested. His bond with Blaise has developed abilities that align with historical dragon mage capabilities, abilities that represent extraordinary magical potential outside conventional limitations. Harry listened silently, stroking Blaise's snout as she rested her massive head beside his chair. Through their bond, he sensed her exhaustion mingled with lingering battle alertness. They offered knowledge, Harry finally said. About dragon mages, about abilities we've only started to rediscover. Malfoy claimed the Ministry and you, Headmaster, had deliberately concealed the full history. Dumbledore studied Harry thoughtfully. A clever manipulation, offering forbidden knowledge to a young wizard naturally seeking understanding of his unique capabilities. His blue eyes held Harry's gaze. What was your assessment of this claim? That it contained enough truth to be persuasive, Harry answered honestly. Our research showed historical suppression of dragon mages by early Ministry authorities. It's not unreasonable to think certain knowledge was deliberately preserved by those who opposed such suppression. A fair analysis, Dumbledore acknowledged. Though I would caution that knowledge preserved by those who valued power above all else would inevitably be curated to emphasize dominance rather than partnership. Harry nodded, having reached similar conclusions. That was clear from Malfoy's approach. He spoke of power deserving freedom from constraint, not responsibility or balance. And your response? Dumbledore inquired mildly, though his eyes held intense interest. I rejected his offer, Harry stated simply. Whatever knowledge they possess, their methods demonstrate they don't understand what dragon mages truly represented. Relief flashed briefly across Dumbledore's features before his composed expression returned. A wise choice. Though I fear this represents merely their opening move rather than their final attempt. The conversation shifted to security implications and protective measures. The reserve would receive additional international security support, magical boundaries would be reinforced, and Harry's training would intensify under Kingsley's expanded guidance. As morning light filled the room, Dumbledore addressed the question that had hung unspoken throughout their discussion. I imagine these events have influenced your thinking regarding Hogwarts. Harry met his gaze steadily. They have. But not in the way you might expect. Over the following days, as the reserve recovered from the attack, Harry's decision crystallized. Consultations with Charlie, with Helena, with Kingsley, and most importantly, long communion with Blaise through their bond led to clarity about his path forward. 2 weeks after the Death Eater assault, Harry met with Dumbledore in Helena's office to deliver his formal response to the Hogwarts offer. I've decided not to attend Hogwarts as a traditional student, Harry began directly. The restrictions required would impede the development of abilities that may prove crucial in whatever conflict is building. Dumbledore nodded, neither surprised nor disappointed. I suspected you might reach this conclusion after recent events. However, Harry continued, I'm proposing an alternative arrangement. I want to establish a Dragon Mage apprenticeship program based jointly at the Reserve and Hogwarts. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose with interest. Please elaborate. Historical records suggest dragon mages served as bridges between human and dragon communities, Harry explained. They developed specialized magic through their bonds, but also functioned as diplomatic intermediaries, educators, and protectors for both societies. He outlined his proposal, regular rotations between the Reserve and Hogwarts, with structured study under various professors complemented by continued development of his unique abilities. Rather than attempting to fit into the traditional student framework, he would establish a new educational model that acknowledged his distinct magical path. Most significantly, Harry concluded, this wouldn't be just for me. The knowledge we're rediscovering about dragon mages shouldn't remain isolated to a single bond. It should be preserved, studied, potentially even revived under proper guidance. You envision teaching others? Dumbledore clarified. Eventually, yes, Harry confirmed. Not to artificially replicate my accidental bond with Blaise, but to establish proper protocols for those with natural affinity for draconic magic. The historical records suggest dragon mages identified potential candidates young, providing specialized training before any actual bonding occurred. Dumbledore stroked his beard thoughtfully. An ambitious proposal. The Board of Governors would require significant persuasion. Recent events provide compelling arguments, Harry pointed out. Death Eaters specifically targeted this knowledge, recognizing its potential. If they're preserving corrupted versions of dragon mage traditions, shouldn't we ensure the authentic tradition survives as well? A persuasive point, Dumbledore acknowledged. Though the political challenges remain substantial. Harry smiled slightly. That's where you come in, Headmaster. Your influence could help establish this program as legitimate magical education rather than fringe experimentation. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled with appreciation for Harry's strategic thinking. You've considered the angles carefully. Not simply rejecting traditional education, but proposing an alternative that serves broader purposes. I've had good advisors, Harry said, glancing at Charlie and Helena, who had remained silent during his presentation. And what does Blaise think of this proposal? Dumbledore asked, always careful to acknowledge the dragon's perspective as equally valid. Harry's smile widened. She thinks it's about time humans recognize the value of dragon knowledge. She's particularly interested in the historical role dragon mages played in maintaining territories and resolving conflicts between communities. Discussions continued over subsequent weeks, refining the proposal into something that could navigate the complex political and educational requirements of both British and Romanian magical authorities. Ilara and Henrik Nystrom contributed academic frameworks that helped legitimize the program in scholarly contexts, while Kingsley's security perspective emphasized the defensive applications that appealed to ministry protection concerns. By the time September arrived, when Harry would have been boarding the Hogwarts Express as a conventional student, the foundations of the Dragon Mage apprenticeship program had been established. The initiative would begin small, with Harry as the primary apprentice and demonstration case, gradually expanding to identify and train others with suitable aptitude. On a clear autumn morning, Harry and Blaise prepared for their ceremonial first flight to Hogwarts, not as student and pet, but as recognized representatives of a magical tradition being formally re-established after centuries of absence. A special reception awaited them, with the school's staff, ministry officials, and international observers gathered to witness this unprecedented educational arrangement. Nervous? Charlie asked as Harry completed final preparations. A bit, Harry admitted. It's one thing to visit Hogwarts for assessment sessions. It's another to arrive as the living embodiment of a controversial magical tradition. Charlie grinned. Just remember, you've faced Death Eaters in aerial combat. School politics should be manageable by comparison. Different kind of challenge, Harry replied wryly. But I've faced worse odds. He mounted Blaise with practiced ease, settling into the ceremonial riding gear that combined traditional dragon mage symbols recovered from their research with modern safety elements. Unlike utilitarian training equipment, this regalia acknowledged his formal role: dragon fire patterns embroidered in gold thread, protective armor styled after historical designs, and most significantly, an emblem combining the Hogwarts crest with ancient dragon mage iconography. Ready to show humans our way? Blaise asked, her mental voice carrying anticipation rather than apprehension. Ready, Harry confirmed. Time to build something new from something ancient. As they prepared to launch, Harry reflected on the remarkable journey from that terrified 5-year-old accidentally apparating to the reserve to the 14-year-old dragon mage apprentice he had become. The path hadn't been easy: political battles, physical dangers, educational challenges, and now the shadowy threat of Death Eaters seeking to corrupt the very tradition he hoped to revive. Yet despite these obstacles, he felt profound certainty about his direction. neither rejecting his wizarding heritage nor abandoning his dragon bond, but forging a path that honored both while creating something uniquely his own. Blaze launched skyward with powerful wing strokes, climbing rapidly above the mountains that had been their home for 9 years. Below, reserve staff gathered to witness their departure, Charlie and Helena at the forefront, pride evident in their expressions. Ahead lay Hogwarts and the formal beginning of a new chapter. Behind them, Death Eaters regrouped and planned, ensuring challenges would continue. Around them, the magical world watched with mixed fascination and apprehension as an ancient tradition re-emerged in unexpected form. Harry leaned forward against Blaze's neck, feeling the perfect synchronization that 9 years of bonding had created. Through fire and blood, through danger and discovery, they had forged something powerful yet balanced, not magic controlled or magic controlling, but magic in partnership. "We fly together," Blaze reminded him, her thought carrying both affection and determination. "Always," Harry agreed as they soared toward their future, dragon and rider, wizard and horntail, the bond between them glowing golden in the morning light, ancient magic reborn through an accidental connection that would reshape the wizarding world in ways not seen for centuries. The dragon's heir had claimed his inheritance at last. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.